Hello, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes, sir.
Yes, see, you can hear me. Yes,
Yes,
sir. Hi, Sharmista. How are you?
Yes, fine, sir.
That's wonderful. Thank you for this. I hope I'm not late, right?
Yeah. Sharmista?
Yes, I'm stuck.
Hello, Sharmista?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is Sandhya. I am going to speak second, I think, right?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, all right. I'm
Very good evening
very good.
to all of you. Today is the second day program on survival constraints of folk art and artisans in COVID-19 pandemic. Yesterday, we have a meeting with Professor Shobit Kumar Chaudhary and 5 scholars and art historians joined to discuss on the current scenario of folk art and crafts of India in our new normal world. Today, we are going to discuss the new strategies of survival and development of new creative ideas and outlets in future, and possible way of marketing with 2 panels. In the first panel, we have 3 panelists, and Professor Amareshwar Gala will chair the session. And in the second panel, there are also 3 panelists, and Professor Molly Kaushal will chair the session. On behalf of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies and on my own behalf, I heartily welcome you all and express my gratitude to both the chairperson and the panelists from different part of India. From yesterday's discussion, we can jot it down some suggestions that how the ethical issues such as social justice and environmental sustainability can include art. Lena Vincent proposed that the use of vernacular language can accommodate the folk or indigenous artists in one platform where they can showcase their art forms in their own way and can build up their market. Sudeep Gupta shared an initiative of the puppeteers by creating Puppet Munch, where people can contribute to raise funds for the sake of popularization of puppet art. It is also noticed that for the popularity of any art form, the artist's name should be acknowledged by the users or the media people. So, the attribution of legal instruments are needed for the survival of the particular artists and his or her art form. Chairperson Professor Chaudhary said that in India, we don't have a national policy for the indigenous art and artisans. From this point of view, we are starting today's meeting to propose a greater market appreciation for the artists in the present pandemic situation. With that hope, if we can find a way out for survival of our folk artists, we can save our own heritage in the long run. Over to you, Piyashi Bharasa, for beginning the session. So to mention that in the first session, Piyashi herself is one of the panelists and she is the executive body member of Kolkata Society for Social Studies. Over to you.
Thank you, Shormishta Dev. Thank you, Dr. Shormishta Devoshu, the Secretary, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. So, very good evening to everybody present here. Today, we are extremely privileged to have Professor Dr. Amoreshwar Gala with us as the chairperson of the first session, first panel. Professor Gala is the Professor of Inclusive Cultural Leadership and Director, International Center for Inclusive Cultural Leadership. He is also the Dean of Faculty Development and Leadership, Anant National University, Ahmedabad. He is also the Chief Curator of Amaravati Heritage Town, India, and founding Executive Director of the International Institute for the Inclusive Museum, Australia, India, USA. Professor Gala has been the UNESCO accredited facilitator in 2003, Intangible Heritage Convention and UNESCO Expo 2015, Museum Recommendation member in 1970 and 1972 conventions, former Vice President ICOM Paris, and former President ICOM of the Asia Pacific Paris. So in the panel today, the first panelist is Dr. Boishakhi Mitra. She's the head of the department and curator in charge, Department of Museology and Rabindra Bharati Museum, Rabindra Bharati University. She has also been the Fulbright, Chevening and Charles Wallace Fellow. The second panelist was Dr. Bijan Mandal, but Dr. Bijan Mandal has expressed his inability to participate in this evening's webinar. But we have another resource person from Baroda, Dr. Sandhya Gajjar, and who is currently managing trustee of Bhasha, which was established in 1996. She is the art historian who has been writing on contemporary Indian art since 1980. She is also an independent curator who curated art and craft exhibitions. The next speaker is me. It's Dr. Piyashi Bharasa. I am presently the assistant professor in the Department of Museology, University of Calcutta. Before joining here in 2013, I was the head of education department in Victoria Memorial Hall for 10 years. So that's it about this panel. So let us start with this session. I'm requesting Professor Gala to kindly start this session, sir. Over to Professor Amoreshwar Gala, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Piyashi Bharasa. Greetings to everybody. Thank you to Calcutta Center for Asian Studies for asking me to chair this session. It's a privilege and honor. The topic is something that, globally we're discussing, the survival of folk art and artisans, what I would call, the intangible heritage of humanity, if you will. And COVID-19, there's a triangulation here. One is we're dealing with the pandemic situation. We're anticipating the post-pandemic situation. However, the post-pandemic so-called normalities, who is going to manage them? Who is going to determine what is normal? Is a very big issue. But we have a triangulation of the crisis. We have COVID-19, we have climate crisis, but we also have the global exposure of gross iniquities. For example, the kind of movement that's gaining, sort of meaning across the world for action, often called Black Lives Matter because it's coming from the US. But we have the same situation that the lives of artisans matter too. And these are often within the Indian caste system and hierarchies at the lower rungs of it and quite severely disadvantaged. And how we address this, we have very eminent panel over here to look at this. But I just want to say one thing, after yesterday's session chaired by my esteemed colleague, Professor Sari Chowdhury. That is that the quality of research on what we know about the intangible heritage of India is quite minimal. We still don't have a national inventory, forget regional inventories in this country. We are a signatory to the 2003 UNESCO Convention on Safeguarding Intangible Heritage, under which one of the domains in Article 2 addresses what we are talking about, the craftsmen and the skills, and what we call folk, whatever folk sometimes means. Even though we are a state party, we are a signatory to the convention, we're still way behind in actually establishing an inventory compared to many other countries. Why is this? So without an inventory, we actually don't know, what our local, regional, national maps of artisans are. So how can we actually, develop strategies if we don't know what the maps are? Second thing is that most of the people who are working in this area are working in the informal sector. They're not in the formal sector. Those in the formal sector, they have structures in place where their well-being, their incomes, their livelihoods could be addressed, and governments could facilitate this. But what of those who are in the informal sector? With the demise of tourism, and the third thing is with the demise of tourism, which is the third largest, which is the largest growth industry in the world until the pandemic hit us. But in India, tourism is the second largest employer after primary industries. And it is within the tourism context, many of the craftspeople have been making a living. So how do we address this? How do we establish what our research is? Or how do we do establish the maps? How do you develop strategies? How do you address emergency situations right now without knowing, what the lie of the land is? These are some serious questions, and I really appreciate this this session because I think it raises a lot of issues. And as Piers already introduced, we have very eminent people on this panel. And we will start off with Dr. Vaishakhi Mitra, Head of Department and Curator in Charge and Senior Assistant Professor, Department of Museology. I've been following Dr. Mitra's work for quite some time, and she's an eminent researcher with tremendous integrity and commitment. But not only that, she has empathy with the topic that we're dealing with through her own research. Let's kickstart the session with Dr. Vaishakhi Mitra. Dr. Mitra, over to you. Nice to see you. Yeah.
Nice to see you too, Professor Gala. Namaskar and good evening, everyone. Thank you, KSAS, for such a kind introduction and my humble, heartfelt regards to Professor Gala. Today, I'll be speaking on promoting folk art during pandemic, some innovative approaches that has been taken. And against that, I would like to make a few suggestions of my own. I have a small PowerPoint presentation, so please allow me to go on screen and share it with you. Okay, is the PowerPoint visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay, and you can hear me? I'm audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to begin now then. Today, I come to you not only as a heritage activist, but also as a representative of the famous Jorashapu Tagore House, where the modern era of Indian art began under the direct patronage of Rabindranath, Abanindranath, and Gaganendranath. There is a definite reason why I draw your attention to this fact. The Bengal School of Art, set in motion by these stalwarts, was the first to recognize the vibrancy of Indian folk traditions. And that was in the beginning of the 20th century when most of the folk art practices of India was unheard of beyond their immediate environments. Traditional paintings like Madhubani and Worli, etc., came to the attention of art connoisseurs in much later years. Later, painters and sculptors of the Bengal school like Jamini Roy, Nandalal Bose, and Ramshankar Beg were heavily influenced by the Kalighat court and the Chantal tribe. Gradually, folk heritage, with its immense tapestry of tangible and intangible components like arts and crafts, folklores, beliefs, customs, and living traditions, became an important part of our national identity. The current pandemic is an unprecedented calamity, and its economic and social impact is going to be immense. As we go into Unlock 4, the worst affected are the populations who subsist on daily wage or seasonal income. Almost 90% of the workers in India are part of this informal economy and subsist on daily work. The social distancing and lockdown measures have affected these populations in an unprecedented ways. For folk artists, while on one hand their incomes have literally dried up, on the other there have been bursts of creativity, which is very spontaneous. The virus has garnered a reasonable response among the folk artists, as many have responded creatively to document the times we are living in. If you look at the picture on the slide, you can see this miniature painting where you have the main protagonist wearing a mask and there is a bottle of sanitizer in the middle of the picture. So you see how the pandemic has affected the folk art. And I'll be showing you, I'm sure yesterday also you have seen a number of paintings and works influenced by pandemic, and I'll share some with you today too. The Great Plague of the early 20th century had produced an artistic legacy, and many believe that the pandemic will do so. In areas of India, folk artists and craftsmen are playing influential roles in the dissemination of information about COVID-19 in a manner that rural India can relate to and create awareness about the virus. Since March, craftspersons have produced artwork underlying the importance of social distancing, wearing face masks, washing hands with soap, other hygiene etiquette, and avoiding group travel. There are also scenes depicting hospitals treating COVID-19 patients. Traditionally, many folk art forms in India were made on large scrolls or as murals to share information with the community. And we had seen even when there was the HIV issue, the scroll painters of Bengal had made beautiful scrolls spreading the word about HIV awareness. So those were being used in those days too. And even today, we find the pandemic being pandemic awareness created through Potochitro. Artists can hold up scrolls in the village squares and they can share the message for creating awareness and eliciting the community response. One of the big examples in this case is Bhilwara in Rajasthan, which is considered a great success story in reversing the tide of the infections. It was an early hotspot before the virus was contained through the creative approaches. Kalyan Joshi is a fard artist from Bhilwara. His paintings carry messages in the local language about social distancing and face masks. Joshi's artworks have become extremely popular with local people as they relate the idea to their own traditions. And Bhilwara is a prime example of innovative strategies in promoting new behavioral patterns. This is another painting by Ambika Devi from Madhubani. Madhubani style painting where you can see the entire issue in one painting, people wearing face masks, maintaining reasonable social distancing. Even the fruit seller, the vegetable seller is handing out the bag with the help of a stick to maintain social distancing. So these are very interesting developments in the folk art scenario. Now, what kinds of efforts have gone into the improving the lives of the folk artists during the pandemic? Mostly, the government efforts have been to some extent lukewarm because, of course, resources have been not that much for us. The government announced about rupees 1.7 lakh crore relief package aimed at providing a safety net for those hit hardest by the COVID-19 lockdown. but we are yet to know how much of that is earmarked for the folk artist. Some state governments are doing groundwork about this. For example, the Tamil Nadu government has provided rupees 1,000 and a ration for 35,850 artists who were registered with the defunct Folk Artist Welfare Board. The financial assistance will be credited to the bank accounts of the beneficiaries directly. Such efforts are also on in some other states. However, the gamut of help, as I told you, is not enough. What can governments do now? Now, the government can do is they can use the folk art for their office complexes. They can use it for gifting during the upcoming festival season, and they can upload on government sites for auctions, which is strongly monitored by the government. These are actions that the government can take. And the government should also encourage people to wear traditional textiles for the coming 1 year if that is possible. Public installations of folk art materials should be made, and all furniture in offices for the government can be made of traditional material like cane, and dokra and bidri artworks can be used for decorating the offices, terracotta, bamboo, and grass items as well. Now, the government also spends a lot of money on advertising. These advertising should look into the scope of using folk art forms, the performing art, folk art, and the other kinds, as to how they can be garnered to use or spread awareness or for government propaganda, whatever, in whichever way it is possible. And they also should seek support through various cultural grant schemes with UNESCO, UNDP for the said purposes. Instead of each artisan applying and fulfilling the compliance, the government should be doing for them. Now, the big role of the 7 zonal cultural centers also need to be highlighted, because they need to play a more proactive role through the district industry centers, panchayats, and the block development. One example which has been really laudable by the Indian government is how the Indian Railways have promoted the various kind of art form by beautifying the rail. It started in the pre-pandemic time in 2018, when it was beautified the Bihar Sampark Kranti Express by painting its coaches with Madhubani artwork. And then in 2019, it was followed up by beautifying the coaches of Bikramshila Express at Bhagalpur with the traditional Manjusha folk art form. And later on, the Janashadharan Express, Patna Rajdhani Express, these were also painted with Madhubani art form using folk artists. The great thing is that the Mithila folk painting became so popular that the Japanese trains, which usually have anime art on them, are now interested to have Mithila art on them. So they have requested Indian government to send some Mithila folk painters over to Japan to paint them. So look at how beautiful the trains look. Now, you do need maintenance and color and painting of the train bogies from time to time. But this is a really innovative idea that if it can be done by the folk artists, they can get some earning, as well as the trains will look vibrant and colorful. So this is really very innovative to me, at least. Here you see the Madhubani station being painted. And I have seen similar things in the Bishnupur station as well, where they use terracotta horses. Because terracotta is in artifacts that indigenous to Bishnupur, they have used it to decorate the stations. So similarly, I think different government departments should find out avenues of how they can employ these artists, and they can benefit. This is a kind of win-win situation. The artists also benefit, and we also nurture the our age-old traditions. Now, the role of the NGOs are also very important in this case. And they have already been channelizing the creativity of these artists and craftspeople in a way that ensures their financial sustenance, and also reinforces the outreach of the public education campaign about the pandemic and the new social norms excuse me, it has imposed. In South India, a COVID-19 artist fund was set up to raise money from performances on a shut-in concert, which was live streamed on March 29th. The concert raised about rupees 9 lakh as seed funding for struggling artists. Rupee donations are now collected through the Sumanasa Foundation, and the foreign funds through Tennessee-based Bhuvana Foundation, which works with tribal and underprivileged communities in Tamil Nadu. The New Delhi-based Craft Village, a member organization of World Craft Council Asia Pacific region, held its annual India Craft Week 2020 digitally. Titled Good Stories Untold from Your Home, the 3-day event told stories of craft persons striving towards one world, one craft. The holding of the week will encourage millions of craftspeople in quarantine like everyone else. More than 70 brands, artisans, and artists participated in the event. Holding such events is one way to prevent the craft sector from a collapse. The other project I'd like to draw your attention to is the Artist Project on Instagram, which was started as an initiative where the organizers work with rural artisans who do not have access or means to put their work online. Their work may even sell internationally, but it is often the middleman who earns the most. So this project reached out to them and gave the work more visibility online and got them orders so they have a steady source of revenue. The other project is the Assistance for Disaster Affected Artists, the ADAA, a crowd-funded campaign to provide prompt financial support to about 100 artists for 3 to 6 months. The group raised rupees 42 lakhs and has reached out to 132 artists. These are all the work the NGOs are doing. They are small NGOs, sometimes medium-sized, but they are trying to do it their own way. Now, the corporate sector has a huge responsibility in this regard also. The Companies Act of 2013 allows for promotion and development of traditional arts and handicrafts to be counted as a corporate social responsibility, giving businesses an effective cause to support folk artists and craftsmen. The large availability of space, the presence of vast corpuses dedicated to CSR funding, and the business expertise of organizing events all come together to make corporations ideal patrons of folk art in these uncertain times. We all can inspire and encourage not only folk artists and craftsmen, but all individuals to use their creativity to adapt to the new normal. I would like to show you the example of GE, who has approached the traditional artists across India to help crafts in print and in different ways in which GE has impacted their life. The advertising campaign depicts some of the most local creative art forms, such as patchwork art, Chauro art, Madhubani art, and Kalamkari art. The artists were given the choice and freedom to use their own art form to present their creative renditions. What followed next over a period of 4 months was a deep dive into the art forms as the artists painstakingly created intricate artworks under the supervision of BBDO, an international advertising agency. It was felt that a standard looking and campaign would not do justice to the scale of GE's commitment to India. After all, these are innovations that are changing in an unprecedented way the lives of millions of Indians living on the margins of progress. What if the campaign came from the people, from someone amongst us whose lives GE impacts in some way or another? Thus, they decided to do away with the oft repeated digitalized imagery, look and feel for the campaign, and instead they created something unique. With this thought, they approached traditional artists who are experts on some of the varied Indian regional art forms to help craft the ad campaign. Encouraged to use their own art forms to express themselves, these artisans literally brought to life the ad campaign, giving the term crowdsourcing an entirely new meaning. The resulting artworks are nothing short of stunning, whilst effectively showcasing the essence of how GE is helping India build, cure, power, and move every day. The idea achieves two things. It showcases GE's involvement with the remotest parts of India across various areas of operation. Secondly, it shines the torch and revives the arts that are marginalized. We are using communication to also bring back traditional Indian art and dying craftsmen into the mainstream. It is part of our mission to create acts, not ads. This is what GE says. And in fact, India is the first country outside the US where GE has rolled out the GE Works campaign. Now, all this has happened in the pre-pandemic era, but the thing is, during the pandemic and in the post-pandemic era, as soon as it comes, we can use such examples in a much broader fashion. In fact, this can be incorporated into the social corporate responsibility policy of every family, every industry. Let's have a look at what GE did. So this is the Shouro Art GE campaign, where GE has used the Shouro artwork, where they have shown how GE engines are used to expand jet airways in India. The next one, where they have used Madhubani art in GE campaign, and this Madhubani painting portrays the amazing effect of the GE Lullaby Warmer, which is an infant care product that helps keep premature babies warm during those first few critical moments of life. And you can see how beautifully Madhubani art has been used. This painting in the Kutch style, it captures the positive influence of GE wind power on communities across India, lighting up homes and improving the quality of life. This is Gond artwork that GE has used, inspired by the revolutionary Optima invention of X-ray system, helping doctors diagnose quickly and accurately. And one last example I have for you is the Kalamkari artwork that is used by GE, where it shows that GE is creating job and empowering business throughout the country, providing financial products and services to help people and business shape their own lives. Now the issue is, how do we unlock the folk practices and how do we bring back these people to mainstream earning methods again? Personally, I feel the efforts that are being done right now are all in piecemeal way, and government is doing something, the private sector, the corporates are doing something, NGOs are doing something. What we really need is a public-private partnership model to promote folk artists once again. It should have a holistic approach, and it should treat both the tangible as well as the intangible aspects of the heritage. And this should be done in a phased manner. So as we go into Unlock 4, and I just heard today that we are not going to have any more lockdowns. So I think it's high time when we sit down together and we make the policy as to how we can have a PPP model to encourage folk artists to create their activities and to earn a living once again. Thank you.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you very much, Dr. Mitra. As always, you're so eloquent, and you brought in a clear optimism in the way you spoke about promoting folk art during the pandemic and some of the innovative approaches. Thank you so much, because there's so much negativity right now. And I think the kind of positive feeling you brought in your presentation by giving illustrations of what was being done before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and the possibilities. But you really brought everything together towards the end by saying that things are being done ad hoc, and which is so true. You know, as good as the examples that you're given, you summed up about the nature of all the activity as being ad hoc. Why is that? Well, we don't have a national cultural policy, right? That's number one thing. Without a national cultural policy, it's very difficult to develop national approaches that might be distributed. Might be a national approach, might be a distributed network across India, and the kind of adaptability, the kind of innovation with which people are working together is admirable. But we have to go beyond that, admiration, to thinking of appropriate infrastructure, appropriate policy, and the kind of holistic approach that you advocated. As long as we have this notion of high art, folk art in India, it's not going to work for people who are in the creative sector. There's an elitism in India. I lived for 43 years overseas, as you know, and I came back to India a few years ago. When I first was working in Australia, they had the same thing, folk art, high art, and then they did away with that as a fracture as categorization that's created by modernity. So they decolonized the model and they created a situation. Most of the artworks that you've shown, whether they are by Madhubani, whether they're by artists from Gond, artists, Wally, whatever artists, what you've shown, most of them would be considered as part of mainstream contemporary art in Australia. And I think that from what you said, we need to really decolonize our minds, the way we treat what is art. We have to come to terms with the fact that we need to have a national policy. We need to have a systematic approach, as you said, stop being ad hoc. But there's huge potential from what you said. It's not as if we are starting from scratch. We have tremendous capacity. I get back to Professor Amartya Sen's thing about capabilities and capacities. So we have the capabilities and capacities, but it's the approach, it's the policy and the interventions that are critical. So really appreciate your eloquent, presentation, which is very moving in a way in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of the examples that you gave, but at the same time, the kind of resilient funds that we need to deal with this situation that are not there. So once again, much appreciated. And I'm sure everyone who has listened to your presentation is touched by it. And that's what we need, is a little bit of putting human face, to COVID-19 and thinking about the realities of people. Now we'll move on to the next presenter, Sandhya Gajar, who is a trustee of Bhasha Trust. Already she has been introduced. Over to you, Sandhya.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. I sincerely thank the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for accommodating me at the last minute in this prestigious webinar. And many thanks to Lena Vincent specifically for pulling this off in a way that only she can manage. I'm very glad, Dr. Gala, you have talking about the way we forward. I'm very happy that Ms. Mitra, Dr. Mitra has shown us the way forward. And so at Bhasha, though we are not having very many happy moments about this, I would love to be in touch with Dr. Mitra and understand how this can be taken forward, so our tribal artisans in Gujarat can also get a leg up.
Sure, ma'am. Any help? I'm very happy to help you in any way.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure looking at your presentation, and it offers a lot of hope. So I'm very happy about that.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I represent an almost 25-year-old organization, which is called the Bhasha Research and Publication Center in Vadodara, Gujarat, and our Adivasi Academy that is based in village Tejgarh in the tribal district of Chota Udaipur in central Gujarat, bordering Madhya Pradesh. Please do access our website, www.bhasharesearch.org, and you will get an idea about what we do. Bhasha was started in 1996 by Dr. Ganesh Devi, who left his job as professor of English at the MS University of Baroda to work on endangered languages. It was academic in nature, but as research plunged in depth, Bhasha realized that most endangered languages were spoken by tribal and nomadic communities, almost all of which were oral in nature. In 1998, we started the Adivasi Academy at Tejgarh, and our first activity was to start a tribal museum. The idea was that the exhibits in the museum would offer tribal communities a sense of value, of identity, of the fact that they existed and had nurtured and sustained tradition that went back many generations and centuries. This museum, which is called Vacha, meaning speech, which is literally translated as speech, but metaphorically, each object speaks of the tribal identity. And that is the identity that understands forests and agriculture and a sustainable harvesting of the land and trees, does not crave for more than it needs, believes in gender equality, community decision-making, and has its own reasoning and logic about how to live in this world. The museum celebrates tribal motor skills with hands and fingers creating objects that almost always are functional, so nothing is wasted, and aesthetically fine-tuned in its design components. Through the exhibits that are paintings, murals, sculptures, the museum celebrates knowledge of nature, of life, of living and death, which the tribals live by. I'm going to show you a few images and explain what they are about. We start with the Pitora painting, which is the identity of the Rathwa tribals of Chota Udaipur area. Just give me a moment. We've been having some problems with the electricity here. So the Pitora is a huge wall painting, a mural. What you are seeing on the screen right now is a small version which is painted on cloth. Second. This is what it looks like. Can you see the images? Hello?
I can't see them. I'm sorry.
No, it can be visible. It is not visible.
Can you see them now?
No.
Not yet, ma'am.
Just a minute. So in the meanwhile, as this is getting sorted, I will just tell you what the Pitora is all about. It is a celebration of their Baba Pitoro, which is the god of the Rathwa community. And it is a painting which is painted on the largest wall in their home, often spilling over to the adjoining walls. And it is done. Can you see the painting now?
Yes. Now
yeah. So this is a painting which is a huge painting painted by a tribal family in their own home. And it is painted as form of wish fulfillment. Can you hear me also? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, we can see. Yeah,
thank you. So what you're seeing in front is the tribal museum, and this is a painting which is a very small Pitora painting, which is painted on a huge sheet of cloth. And next one. So this is the way it is actually painted in their homes. Next one. This one is also painted on cloth because the Pitora painters now want to sell these works and earn some money, because they paint only during the time of the year when they do not have work in the fields. Next one. This is also painted in the home. Next. This is where that's the Rathwa tribal showing some people who are visitors at the Adivasi Academy some of his work. And these are examples of beadwork from different parts of tribal India. Next. This is work made by a wood carver. Wood carving is also an important craft practiced by the Rathwa tribals, and this is presently in the Cambridge in the Cambridge Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology, and it what it denotes is a Gera musician in the Rathwa community who often dances when they are celebrating Holi. So this is a work which is now in that museum. We have a copy of this in the museum at Tejgarh as well. Next. So this is also part of our museum, and this is the kind of woodwork which they generally make. They make sculptures. These are not votive images. Next. So this they also work with beads. This is some of what the tribal women wear and look like in that area, and what they have in front of them is something they have made, which is traditionally a welcoming kind of thing they hang on their doorways, which in Gujarat is called a toran, and every home has a toran in Gujarat. Next. So beadwork is very popular, and this is the way they make. They use beads. Unfortunately, not many tribals wear this beadwork. They actually make it only to sell to others. They themselves prefer to wear silver. It's a sad situation, but that's the way it is. I think they buy silver as a form of investment. Next. They also make pottery, and they use lac. Lac is harvested from the trees. There are 3 types of trees which are grow in that area. And there are certain kind of worms which they let loose on those trees. They get bunches of them. And from the excreta of the worms, the lac, which we make lac bangles also, very popular in Rajasthan. So lac is harvested. Then the lac is boiled like this and made into a kind of a glaze. Next. Next. This is the whole family. This is the whole family of the potter community as part of the Rathwas who make the utensils which the community uses. And then next one. And next. So this is what. Can you go back? Can you go back, please? Yeah. This is what the lac looks like, and they store it like this. And next one. And this is what the lac kind of, when it is boiled, it comes down to this. And this color is also used to dye fabrics in this beautiful red color. And the final, next one. And the final utensils are like this. And you can cook in them. All of them cook in these vessels. The lac is supposed to have some medicinal value as well. And it makes sure that the terracotta does not absorb the liquid element in whatever food they are cooking, and it remains there. And the lac is applied while the pot is still hot in the kiln, and they take them out and then quickly apply it and do it this way. So these are products which are now urbanized also. A lot of them come into urban areas and people use them to serve things, etc. But the community itself uses them extensively to cook in these. Next. Now, so just hold on with this. I'm going to speak for a while. So though in the initial years of our work, we did try to engage with tribal crafts. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. You've got another 4 minutes left, please. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Though in the initial years of our work, we did try to engage with tribal craft families, we came to realize that this engagement is rather complex. It moves from understanding the craft, how it has evolved and what it means to the community. That is, whether it has religious or ritualistic significance, in which case one has to deal with it very carefully, or whether it is important in its functionality as decoration of the home, bodily adornment, and other aspects of everyday living. Whether they are okay with producing it in large quantities and make sure that the quality is retained in the production of these quantities. And then comes the most difficult part of all, the marketing of these materials. Generally, the tribals market whatever they produce in their own village hearts, which are held on different days in different villages, so they can move from village to village to sell their products. And their products are also tailored to meet the needs of the community. Now, what you see in front of you is this image, the cloth, the loin cloth which the Rathwa men are wearing are called kasota. Next, and they are woven by the Vankar tribal community in a pit loom, and which width is the size of the loin cloth which they wear. Now, the issue is that most of the tribal communities now, the men, do not wear this because they've started wearing trousers. And so they have opted for the regular underwear, what is available in the market. And now there are, in our area, there are only 3 Vankar weavers left who still practice it. Next. So it was largely, we at Bhasha, we have been academics. But since the last 2 years, we have got an extraordinary person, Dr. Madan Meena, who is a textile and crafts expert and an artist himself. He joined us as trustee and the honorary director of the academy. And he lives there 10 days in a month. And now our engagement with the crafts has become more. And this is what he has started working. We've got an intern from the Institute of Crafts and Design, Jaipur, who has started innovating with the viewers to make a few products which are not kasota, loincloth, nobody wears it, but other things which can still be used. So quickly, can we run through the images? I'm going to just quickly run through the images. So these are the original loincloths. Next. 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 Yeah. So we are still in the nascent stage now, but have done enough homework to know a few points which I want to share with all of you and which have all become very painfully apparent during the pandemic. Firstly, if a tribal community practices crafts, there will always be several members in the community who engage in it. On an average, there will be a large number of these who will produce mediocre work. A few will produce good work, a handful whose work will be excellent. And finally, some you can count on the fingers of your hand and moves into the zone of contemporary art while using the medium of that craft. These are the ones whose works must be shown in galleries, as Lena Vincent had pointed out yesterday, and should command the kind of prices that really good mainstream artists do today. However, there will always be a buyer for the different qualities of the work produced, and the market will decide. Secondly, because there was a far sharper understanding of the skills and capabilities of our folk, rural, and tribal arts communities at the time of independence than it is in the last few decades. They established institutions such as the Handloom Board, the Crafts Council of India, the Cottage Industries Board, and each state was encouraged to create its own handloom and handicrafts limited companies that would access crafts families across the state, buy their products and market them in state emporiums that were prominently housed in key marketplaces in all the large cities of the state, the metropolises across the country, and of course in Delhi. Tribal research and training institutes known as the TRTIs were established in almost all states with considerable tribal populations. TRTIs were required to set up museums in key tribal areas so they could really collect some very good and interesting objects. Later on, TriFed, which stands for Tribal Cooperative Marketing Development Federation of India, was established, and its website says that it supports 125,000 artisan families, markets 100,000 products, has 121 retail outlets, and has a turnover of 91 crore, which I don't know whether it is last year's figures or a cumulative figure. Thereafter, Tribes, a special shop chain for only tribal created products, came into being, but one does not see many of them. When I visited the one in Delhi, it was priced so high that nobody could buy anything there. Now, what is the status of all these institutions where hundreds of people are employed but have very little work to show for it? There was a time when a visit to a state emporium was a delight. We also bought from emporiums because you were assured you got the right price, and neither you nor the craftsperson who made that piece was cheated. Now the places are crammed with the worst possible examples of handlooms and handicrafts. If they plead that they are not doing well economically, then they really have only themselves to blame. Recently, the Handloom Board was abolished, not temporarily discontinued, abolished, which means that there is little likelihood of it ever being reborn. Already players from the private sector have moved into the handloom sector, taking over entire tribal villages of weavers who are contracted not to sell to anyone and work to designs that they give. This brings me to another major issue. We have the NID, the National Institute of Design at Ahmedabad, with campuses in several other cities as well. NIFT and its several campuses, the Indian Institute of Craft and Design at Jaipur, and then the many departments of clothing and textiles affiliated to regular and agricultural universities. With the kind of vast heritage of handicrafts and handlooms that each Indian state has, one would expect these government-funded institutions to work with craftspersons, understands the issue they face at various levels, from accessing raw materials to appropriately introducing design changes to fashion products that have appeal in urban and global markets, to selling their products at the right price. But they rarely do that. Recently, we were contacted by one of these institutions who wanted to hold a training session with the beadwork, jewelry, making Ratwa Adivasi women, whom you saw in some of the pictures I showed you. In the budget they sent us for
Sanjay, could we wind up, please?
Yeah, 2 minutes. They had kept rupees 200 a day as honorarium for the bead workers, and they had to bring their own packed lunch. While for themselves, they had a good enough per day allowance with lunch and chai and everything on the house. This is a very wrong attitude to bring to a teaching learning session. We are so caught up with the knowledge and technical skills that we have, we don't even care to ask the tribal communities about the knowledge they have that makes them technically so proficient. So you can now imagine that when this is the situation in normal circumstances, what must the tribal communities that are so ignored and exploited must have suffered in the pandemic. However, I do not want to end on a despondent note here. So there is something I want to show which you can smile about. It's a film of just a minute.
We want more and more youngsters to come and experience this place because handlooms is our heritage which has been passed on from generation to generation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that, Sanjayji, you've raised a number of issues. You presented that we have major national institutes, we have the capacity, and yet we're not able to translate that infrastructure to serve the first voice of the people, the primary rights holders. I mean, you were talking about rights holders. I mean, I was privileged about a month ago to host a webinar together with the museum in Jodhpur and the Adivasi Academy, where I learned more about what you're doing. You're You're only 4 hours away from where I am now. I'm not in Brisbane, Australia. I'm in Ahmedabad, stranded for 6 months now.
2 hours, less than 2 hours.
Less than 2 hours. Okay, somebody said 4 hours. And I know with the traffic of in a pandemic situation, it would be even faster.
Yeah, sure.
Less traffic. Now, I think that there are 3 things that really hit me hard from what you said. That is, we really need to rethink the way we use the language.
Yeah.
The language, Bhasa, could be empowering or disempowering, right? The language could be empowering or disempowering. The creativity of people is there. But we do have in India, I'm an Australian, but I hope you'll all forgive me for saying that. I was born, brought up, and educated in India, so I think I have a right to say this. I think to a large extent, there are advocates and critics and inspirational leaders like you and Dr. Mitra, but the majority of people that I've come across are very much urban middle-class people, have a very strong middle-class values of us saving them kind of approach, And I think we need to address that. Second thing is the intellectual property rights of the people who are the producers, need to be safeguarded in the country, which are not necessarily being done. Like I think Dr. Mitra mentioned about Kalamkari, but what tourism has done is people digitize Kalamkari, use it in railway stations everywhere. In Andhra, in fact, the Kalamkari people do not get a single paisa out of that. So there's the middle people that you mentioned have become even more exploitative. The pandemic has actually given them an opportunity because these middle people have the resources and infrastructure to take advantage of this situation. And the third thing is that, in terms of what came out of your presentation is, in terms of the creativity of these artists in tribal communities, they need to control the process.
Yeah.
They need to control the marketing. Until they can actually control the process and the marketing, they will produce what the market wants.
Yes, absolutely. And also
that changes their very sense of place and identity.
Yes.
So the commodification, commercialization of their work and the control by the marketplace. How do we create infrastructure nationally? How do we create infrastructure regionally? These are some of the things that came out of, and it breaks my heart because I oversaw, and I was there in Australia when this transformation took place, where Aboriginal artists, their rights are safeguarded by national law. The infrastructure is there for them to create and market without the market determining what is good for them. That transition took place, and I played an important role in that as National Director of Affirmative Action. But now I come back to India. My challenge is how do we engage the gatekeepers? The gatekeepers in the cities, the middle-class gatekeepers, the consultants, the marketing people, who are very powerful, and very often they have alliances. In Mangalagiri, which produces saris in Andhra Pradesh, very famous, near Vijayawada, one of the things I found is some of these gatekeepers have contracts with people in London and other places, and they supply, they make the money. So there's a huge exploitative system that's come into place. How do we deal with that? And I think organizations like yours and the museum, Tribal Museum, have a very important role to play, to center the rights of, artists and craftspeople who are the primary producers. If you go back to the 2003 UNESCO Convention, it's the bearers and transmitters of this intangible heritage.
Yes.
They have to be respected first, and our ability to create spaces for communities and groups and individuals who are the carriers is extremely critical. In India, we have the international treaty obligations under the convention, but do we actually follow up? Do we follow up in practice? But thank you very much for your inspirational talk. You're wonderful. I look forward to meeting you soon.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you too.
Yeah. And we'll move on to the next speaker, Dr. Piasi Barasa. Now we're talking about museums. Throughout this, Piasi, intangible heritage and the role of museums for its sustainability under the COVID situation. Piasi, I've been to your Department of Museology gave many talks over there many times. All of you young people coming out of the department, you're the next generation. The future is in your hands. And we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. So straightway I'm going to my presentation. Just give me a minute. I'm starting my presentation.
But you can keep talking while the presentation is being made. Let's hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Piazza, could you speak as to what you're going to say while your presentation is uploaded? Hello, Piazza. Okay, you're coming on screen now. Thank you.
So today I'm going to talk on the intangible cultural heritage and the role of museum for its sustainability in COVID-19 situation. So whether my screen is visible, sir? Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible. We can see. Go on.
But I can't see.
It says you're presenting to everyone, so you have to start. Yeah. Great, we can see your presentation. Go ahead, Piazza.
Okay, sir. So, the topic is intangible folk heritage. So when we are talking about intangible cultural heritage, let us once again just going through the definition as per the UNESCO Convention 2003. So intangible cultural heritage means the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, as well as the instruments, objects, artifacts, and cultural spaces associated therewith. So we all know about it. And after the UNESCO Convention 2003, a lot of focus has been given in this intangible cultural heritage. And as regards the museums also organizing regularly the programs. But my point is the focus of my presentation today is that more of academic discussions and more of webinars and other things are happening, but not with the association with the artisans and art practitioners of intangible cultural heritage in India. So intangible folk heritage, when we are talking about the folk heritage portrays the cultural life of a community or communities. It encompasses the body of expressive culture associated with the fields of folklore and cultural heritage. So intangible folk heritage includes the forms such as music, dance, and oral traditions, narrative structures. On our right, this is the dance form of Santali dance from Jharkhand. So when talking about the role of museum, let us see what the museums in India are doing now in this COVID pandemic situations. After the lockdown, many museums in India revamped their virtual tours with the support from Google Art and Culture during COVID-19 pandemic. Many museums updated their websites for virtual resources, e-learning, organized online workshops, trainings, webinars, etc. Many museums also organized online exhibitions, used their social media like #MuseumFromHome for sharing their content in innovative ways. Many museums in the world, like the Jaipur Getty Museum in Los Angeles sponsored a very, very innovative idea. That's why I have given here the Getty Museum Challenge, when they're inviting people to use everyday objects to recreate works of art and share their creations on social media, prompting thousands of submissions. Coming back to Indian scenario, how many museums have organized? But when I'm talking about the role of museums for the sustainability of the intangible cultural heritage, let us get a kind of survey that how many museums have organized programs on intangible cultural heritage involving the artists and artisans. How many of them have posted on the websites a detailed documentation of artifacts associated with intangible cultural heritage in their holdings? How many of them provided support to the artists and the practitioners for conducting workshops or performances and database creation and dissemination through various digital media? If, in any case, that is my personal opinion, that if, in any case, the numbers are less, then why? We have to find out the reason. Whether the intangible art forms or practices are not popular, whether museums should only focus on virtual tools, academic discussions, webinars, etc., on ICH during this period, whether we have done online survey to understand the visitor's choice and preferences for being engaged with museums during this period. Now, I personally, for this presentation, I have done a very small survey over phone, over WhatsApp and whatever, and try to collect some information about the choices of the visitors. So I found that the young adults, the college and university goers, since I'm taking regularly the classes and I'm associating with them regularly. So young adults, they're more interested in intangible cultural heritage performances rather than academic discussions, and rest are either not so interested or little interested. The families, they are interested in intangible cultural heritage performances for entertainment and making awareness among the children as well. The general visitors more interested in live performances by the artisans and artists. That is a very small survey, maximum 60 to 70 people I could talk to. So now let us have a look. We all know, but let us have a look. This intangible world heritage from India. There are 13 traditions, that is Kumbh Mela, Nowruz, yoga, traditional brass and copper craft utensils making among the Khateras of Jandiala Guru Punjab, then Sankirtana ritual singing from Manipur, Buddhist chanting of Ladakh, Chow dance, Kalbelia folk songs and dances of Rajasthan, Mudittu ritual theatre, dance drama of Kerala, Ramman, the religious festival and ritual theatre of Garhwal Himalayas, Kutiyattam Sanskrit theatre, traditional Vedic chanting, Ramlila, the traditional performance of Ramayana. So these are the world heritage. All these traditions are enlisted in the World Heritage List by UNESCO from India. So these are some of the images: Kumbh Mela, yoga, Navroz, Parsi New Year, the traditional brass and copper craft of utensil making by Khateras of Jandiala Guru Punjab, the Sankirtana ritual singing, drumming and dancing of Manipur, the Buddhist chanting, recitation of sacred Buddhic texts, the Chow dance, Kalbelia, folk songs and dance of Rajasthan, the Ramman festival, Ramlila performance and Vedic chanting. So when we are talking about museum, what role museum can play, in my opinion, as per my experience as a working experience in a national level museum like Victoria Memorial Hall, and since I organized hundreds of programs during that 10 years. So I think whatever I think, in my opinion, that all the regional dances, whatever we have in India, such as the Bhangra, Punjab, Dandiya, Gujarat, Bihu dances of Assam, which project the cultural heritage of those regions, are prominent containers in the field of Indian folk art. And in case of the museums in West Bengal, we can really organize in the digital platform such programs by the performance in COVID-19 situation. Maybe it is a single performance of 20 to 30 minutes. We can organize here on digital platform for the audience, which can earn revenue both for the museum and for the performance. Not only the discussions, only on the academic discussions on the folk dances. Now, the folk musicians can be involved from different states of India for the performance on intangible cultural heritage, such as Lavani, Bihu, Sufi music, Jhumar, Baul Bhateli on the digital platform. The musical artifacts associated with the traditions may also be documented and interpreted at the same time. So basically, the young generation, many of them, not all, of course, many of them, they don't, they are not aware about this tradition and the musical instruments and our rich cultural heritage. So museum, in this COVID situation, on digital platform, they can definitely organize such programs. Then oral history or traditions, for example, the storytelling by the folk performance from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Dasavatara, we can organize programs here on digital platform, and museums, many museums can do it. I don't know whether any museum during this last 6 months or 5 months, they have done it, I don't know.
Yes, you have 2 minutes, Piazza.
Yeah. Definitely, we can do it. The museums can do it. Then the Kollam, this is a very popular tradition, ritualistic tradition in South India. And here in West Bengal, we have Alpana. So museums, we can generally collaborate, but so we can collaborate with the museums there, the museums in West Bengal and the museums in South. We can collaborate and portray these traditions. Again, this is a musical instrument on Sankirtana. This is for school painting, and we in West Bengal we have a school painting also, auto painting. So both the museums in West Bengal, museums in Rajasthan, we can collaborate and can organize programs on digital platform. The puppet theater, yesterday the scholars, they have already spoken about it. So finally, my submissions are more collaborations with temples, art and artisan societies to organize the live performance with narrations will be beneficial for this situation. Inviting the communities to curate their own artifacts and showcase small online exhibitions. We can also invite the visitors to send their small curatorial concepts to mount single object exhibitions on intangible cultural heritage. Short documentary film shows on intangible cultural heritage and social media can be organized. Sometimes inviting the community people to share with us their knowledge on medicinal plants and their uses. That is also a very interesting thing. Intangible cultural heritage like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which connect India with many Southeast Asian countries, may also be taken into account for international collaborations. So thank you.
Thank you, Piazza. Much appreciated. It's good to hear youth voices when you talk about young people. So it's very much appreciated. But Piazza, you know that the very question of a museum is being discussed and debated by the International Council of Museums. And very few debates have taken place in India. And we're still very object-centered, as you know, and you teach in this area in one of the very big departments. We're still very object-centered in terms of when we think of museums as sites for safeguarding intangible heritage, which is what you're advocating. Museums as sites for promoting, safeguarding, and promoting respect to intangible heritage. We're still a long way to go, although I know you're very optimistic. That's beautiful that you're very optimistic. We're a very long way to go. Thank you very much. And now I want to ask the organizers, how much time do I have left for this session?
Sir, you have time.
We have time, sir.
Time.
10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to question and answer.
Yeah, who is going to, Sharmishta, are you going to flick across the questions to me? Or take the questions and in a group? We take them all in one go? How do we do it?
For all the audiences, you can ask.
Yeah, well,
if anyone
why
can,
don't the audience put on the chat box their questions?
Yes, they can also.
I think it's the best way to go. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. No, I still haven't got any questions. That's okay. But I think we have had, we just heard 3 wonderful people. And I'm glad that they're all women because to a large extent, every conference, every meeting that I go to, I hear mostly men and rarely any women. So to hear through 3 women presenters, excellent presenters, eloquently, it's wonderful to do that, to hear that, and the organizers too, Sharmishta, So it's amazing. There's a gender perspective here that we need to take into consideration. Now, this brings me to several points. I still don't see any questions. So this, okay, don't worry about it. I'm posing questions to you, all of you, audience, not just the speakers. Um, we don't have an approach as yet to rethink, and I know that Dr. Mitra has been questioning this. What is it that we are doing in this country in terms of tangible and intangible heritage? Why are we dealing with the binary? Can we take a holistic approach as she advocated? And that's a question we need to ask again and again. What kind of museums, what kind of heritage are we safeguarding, are we promoting? For example, the number of projects that were funded in the last 4 to 5 years before the pandemic, most of them focused on heritage conservation of the tangible, site-centered, building-centered, not even properly cultural landscape-centered. If they're culturally landscape-centered, then they have to take into consideration intangible heritage. So what became glaringly absent in the last 5 years is the absence of a national policy on museums, a national policy on intangible heritage, and a national policy dealing with even the built environment, is missing. So we need major rethinking of what we mean by heritage, what we mean by museums, what we mean by art, when we are saying what I would consider as an Australian contemporary art by Aboriginal artists, that it's being referred to as folk art. So do we need to rethink? And to what extent do we need to decolonize our institutional infrastructure, decolonize our curricula as we teach, decolonize our pedagogy, decolonize so many of our things when we have such amazing, rich cultural and linguistic diversity of India, which is highly endangered because we so much given into globalization, monoculturalism that's dominant from a middle class point of view. More than 80% of Indians live in villages, and yet we put most of our money when we talk about heritage into the cities. So where is that imbalance? Who represents the Indians of that 80% is a key question. These are, and what kind of infrastructure is needed? Nationally, locally, regionally, what kind of infrastructure is needed? If you look at the handicrafts, the handloom census that was taken in 2019 and 20, there are 5.5 lakh handlooms that suddenly have gone silent in India, across India. Major disaster. In fact, it's like a tsunami or an earthquake, if you will, in the lives of India's living heritage. The other thing is that when do we stop thinking that heritage is frozen in time? That which is intangible, as PRC would support me, is living, dynamic, and changing. So where is the infrastructure for us to see how the bearers and transmitters themselves can actually control their own lives, control the way the changes take place, control the way they produce, and control the way they can market and benefit. And these are very critical questions for us in India. These have come up here. And lastly, I'm someone who is always optimistic, but I'm optimistic only when, all of you are listening. We're all middle-class Indians. We're all privileged. We're highly empowered. But we need to rethink how we could work, outside the box, how we could work, with various sectors in a way that is showing respect, in a way letting go of the authority. Because as knowledge keepers in the academy, as knowledge keepers in institutions, we authorize, what is other. We still have this very strong emphasis in India, very strong notion of self and the other. And the self is empowered, the other is totally disempowered in the Indian context. How do we deal with this? How do we decolonize the system? How do we rethink? rethink is really critical. The pandemic provides an opportunity for us to be reflexive, be critical, be honest to ourselves. And also, the 2003 convention, in 2018, the Intergovernmental Committee adopted a code of ethics. So how many people actually know about the code of ethics associated with the convention? How many people actually practice ethics? How many people know about the code of ethics of International Council of Museums? How many people actually practice? These are all critical issues, even for us middle class people who largely remain gatekeepers, knowledge makers in this area. So I'm being very, I'm not apologizing for being very honest about it. I really mean at my age, I have nothing to lose, but to speak the truth. The truth is we have a long way to go. Um, and we have a very long way to go, but we can only go so far unless, as long as we can rethink what we mean by heritage, what we mean by, um, heritage, museums, communities, groups, and individuals. We have to rethink them. There's a question from my esteemed colleague, friend. How does CSR involvement you feel is meaningful promoting folk artists and livelihoods? History of corporate groups in relation to tribal resources is really pitiable, literally many plundered resources. Any other panelists want to answer this question from Professor Dr. Sarit Kumar Chaudhary? Okay, in the meanwhile, there's Balram Singanpalli who says that there's several works being done to revive crafts, preserve them since 1976. I totally agree with you. There are several being done. But when you take the population of India, 1.3 billion, when you take the extent of the craft traditions of India, what small percentage is being revived? Already Dr. Mitra presented some excellent examples of what can be done, the possibilities pre-pandemic. But what I'm saying is it's not the few. I'm talking about the majority in the country. And the majority can only happen if we have a national approach. Anybody wants to answer Professor Chaudhary's question? I will read again. How does CSR involvement feel that you feel is meaningful for promoting folk? Yeah. Dr. Mitra,
I must have a little go at it. The thing is, each company, especially the bigger ones, they have a lump sum of money kept away for corporate social responsibility activities. Usually that goes into cricket and stuffs like that. So this should be a policy decision on the part of the company that since the pandemic has happened and we don't know when it is going to stop, it is imperative that we put it into the marginalized part of the society that would give them a better visibility, better accountability. So that is the reason why I brought into the CSR. And the other thing, Professor Gala, that you were saying that we don't have a cultural policy, that's so true. And we don't have a museum policy. We need to have one. But one good development that has happened is that India finally has a chief executive officer in charge of museums and cultural spaces.
Yeah.
So we are very hopeful that he will take up the issues of having a national cultural policy and having a national museum policy as well.
Yeah.
I would also like to respond, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to respond to the question related to the CSR. And you see, what happens with CSR is that the thinking is very much like, what's the bottom line? How many people do we reach when we put in X amount of money? And that is not always a situation. Like, for instance, in the Kasota weaving, which I showed you, there are only 2 old men who are alive who can teach their children. The children don't want to learn because they know there is no money in it. Now, if we do not put in money to save those 2 people and to find ways in which to interest younger people from the community to learn and then find a marketing platform to sell those, whatever they have to create, and then, inculcate some entrepreneurship in them, nothing is going to happen. So many times CSR funders do not understand the largeness of the problem involved, and then they calculate like अबे 20-25 लोगों के लिए हम क्या 10 लाख रुपए देंगे, that sort of stuff. So that is where the understanding and the sensitivity to what is being lost. So even weaving, you can say, is a tangible heritage, but there is intangibility in the knowledge. I mean, looms are being burned as firewood, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So
that's so sad. That's so sad. That's happening. Now, some of you are asking questions whether such and such journal is published. Please, you have search engines. That's where you can find this. You can find out whether they're being done. I think that both Dr. Mitra, Mrs. Gajar have raised the questions about the CSR funds. What I have seen, I've been traveling extensively in India, doing various things. What I've seen is that a lot of CSR funds, yes, cricket and various other things, Dr. Mitra, but there's a lot of opportunism in India. I'm sorry, I've said this once before and too many times, also published in national newspapers, that what in India I see is too many parachute consultants. Wherever there's money, suddenly they parachute. They arrive, they become advisors. I think this is the biggest disease that Indian culture has got, is unethical parachute consultants. I'm not saying that they're not good consultants, some wonderful consultants, brilliant ones in this country, but the majority of come across will come when there's an opportunity to find money. So same thing with CSR money. CSR money is used, and the people who are actually responsible for managing the CSR funds themselves are not really educated about the cultural sector in this country. So my argument has been with the government that the CSR funds, a percentage of them should go into a national cultural fund, which is managed by an autonomous board, with grant-giving ability, at least one of the strategies. There are many strategies in a country like India. So I think when India announced, that 2%, India has the highest percentage of money going for CSR in the world compared to any other country. I was at a UNWTO, World Tourism Organization, and UNESCO forum speaking, and I felt so proud. I thought this is fantastic. In India, this was in Cambodia, that at Siem Reap. I felt so proud. I said to them, here is the example that India is setting the rest of the world. You should match the percentage of CSR percentage that's been allocated in India by law. And this is just before I came back. And then when I came back to India, what I found is, that this is really sad that these are not being used appropriately. However, having said that, I think Dr. Mitra wants us, and so does Mrs. Gajar and Dr. Barosa, they all want us to be positive about it. We have possibilities, we have potential, we have various demonstration projects, various models. So how do we move forward is the key question. And I think we can keep up discussions like this, webinars like this, just to raise consciousness. If the consciousness is raised, then maybe we might make some progress. And Dr. Mitra mentioned that finally we have a CEO of National Museums who is also responsible for the National Institute of Cultural Heritage and Conservation, Mr. Raghavendra Singh. He's a brilliant man. He's a historian who understands the range of issues. So we look forward to what's going to happen in the coming years. And some of us have been involved in discussions, and the question of national museum policy becomes critical. But what museums? What do we understand by museums in this country? Are we just aping the West? Are we just aping elsewhere? I mean, we have wonderful museologists, like in India, both in Calcutta and the Victoria Memorial Director is a brilliant thinker, So do we have the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum, Dr. Banerjee. He's a brilliant museologist. And Professor Sari Chowdhury brought about many changes when he was for 5 years the director of Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manas Sangralaya in Bhopal. But we have some brilliant museologists, but they're very few and far in between. So we need a major movement. The second thing is that there are not many institutions, as Mrs. Sandhya Gajar mentioned. There are institutes, but are they really engaging with the artists and craftspeople? Are they really working on integrated product design, new product design with them, with respect to the rights holders? She raised a very important question. But this is not happening. How many museum studies programs we have in India? Calcutta, Delhi National Museum Institute, Baroda, maybe another 2 or 3 that we have. But full-fledged museum studies programs, if you take Aligarh Muslim University, also maybe about 4 or 5. And of course, Ravindra Bharati, with Dr. Mitra, she's been doing a whole range of think tanks and raising issues. But these are very few. A small country like Australia with 26 million people, not 1.3 billion, 26 million people, we have 16 programs. We have 16. And as someone who did the national guidelines for Prime Minister and Cabinet, my ambition was that every first-year student in an undergraduate course does a museology course, not because they want to work in a museum, but because of awareness raising, and they understand about museums and their significance. I think we need some fundamental changes on our educational system, and the new national education policy provides many windows of opportunity to be interdisciplinary, to be innovative. There's more autonomy for institutions, to come up with what they want to do, and culture has been highlighted. Yeah. So, and there are many ways we could move forward on this. This is on YouTube, so people want to watch, they can watch again afterwards. Not many questions have come through. Only some comments about this has been done, that's been done. You're absolutely right. There are things being done. And you can also, on search engines, find out most of what you want. But the key question about CSR has been asked, and the key question remains about national policies. Otherwise, it will remain ad hoc, as Dr. Mitra said. And as Mr.
Sahu?
Yes, yes, please. What do you want to respond to one of the questions?
There is a question by Sarveshwara Sahu. There are so many museums across the country and have large space, and how the space can be used for live demo or activities of the craftsmen that can fulfill many objectives. Sure. With your permission, can I answer this question, sir?
Sure, Piasi, please.
Yeah. So actually, Mr. Sahu, there are many museums, and when the COVID pandemic was not there, many museums were organizing with several programs with the artisans and the craftsperson. But when the COVID is there is an absolutely lockdown. I don't know what kind of policies are required for the museums to organize the programs on digital platform with small programs, with the live programs with the scroll painters and the other the intangible cultural heritage traditions I have spoken about. So there are many more opportunities, and I don't know that specifically a kind of policies required for doing such kind of programs for giving the support to the artisans and the art practitioners. That is my submission that I wanted to tell. When I was there in Victoria Memorial, being the head of education department, I organized several programs with the artisans. But when today I have spoken about the COVID situation. Whenever the COVID situation there, even then the museums can organize such programs. But we have to
Thank you, Piasa. Thank you.
Yes,
you're absolutely right. I'm totally with you, and I'm sure we're all with what you're saying. But let me say one thing about the digital. One of the misnomers in India is digitization. Digitization is the salvation. It's not true. Digital technologies are only a means; they're not an end in themselves. So digitization is important. Digital globalization is taking place in India. Collections are being digitized. So what? I mean, what's happened to all those collections that have been digitized? There's an old Muslim saying that a closed book is like a block of stone. So you can digitize an object or artwork, but as long as it's locked up in a database, it's like it's no use to nobody. But to open them up, we need new interpretive strategies, new exhibition strategies, new approaches. But all those things can be dealt with ad hoc, but it won't help. And that's why, both Dr. Mitra and myself are advocating we need national policy approaches.
Yes. Yes.
And it is internationally, it is a common practice. If you're a national policy, then the responsible ministry then would make a strategy and make a budget appropriation plain with the Ministry of Finance during the budgeting. So we don't have that facility. What is allocated is largely allocated because of consideration rather than policy. So there are many possibilities. All of you are listening. And now what I'm going to do is I think we need to wind up, right, to the organizers, or do we have some more time? Maybe if you have some more time, I'd like to ask
we have to go to the next station.
Okay, so can I give each of the panelists 1 minute to say something to the audience that they would like to? Please, Sharmishta.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, we'll just 1 minute, please. Each of the panelists, what you would like to say. Your final burning question or comment, please. Dr. Mitra, why don't you start?
Yes, I'll start. I think the pandemic, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has brought us face to face with some hard realities in the cultural sector, especially regards to the marginal folk artists. And it is time that we wake up and we address it. And this is also the time when we are using a lot of extra brainwaves that we never knew we had. So let us apply them to bring up the folk artists and the folk art forms that is being neglected for so long.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. Very much appreciated. Time to wake up. But we have reflective spaces. We can reflect on things during the lockdown. Mrs. Sandhya Gajar, would you like to go 1 minute?
I would like to just make one really extraordinary message which I got from one of our tribal artisans. And when we asked them whether there is enough food they have at the height of the pandemic, they said, yes, we have enough food, but even if we don't have food, it's okay. Can you please send us some money so that I can buy wood and I can buy paper and I can buy pencils and I can keep my work going? I think, this spirit which is there in our artisans, which we are not able to, just not able to understand. I feel so sorry.
Thank you, Sandhya ji. I mean, access to resources to continue, their intangible heritage is critical. Piasi, would you like to go last now?
Yes, sir. Yeah, of course, the policies should be there. We will be waiting for the policies. But let us, at least the major museums in India, let us start small initiatives to really support the art and artisans people in this COVID pandemic situation and in future also. So thanks to all of you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dr. Barosa. We can't do all things in one go. We can't have big things happen just like that. We got to start small. And we might need some small demonstration projects during the COVID and post-COVID situation. So would all the participants join me in thanking digitally, virtually, our three amazing panelists?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe and take care. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, please, sir. Around
right. Yeah. So, thanks to Professor Gala and the other two panelists for the session just we have had. And now it's time to start the second session of second day seminar. Here we have the chairperson, Professor Molly Kaushal. Dr. Molly Kaushal is an academician, curator and a filmmaker and professor of performance studies and HATE, Janapada Sampada Division of IGNCA, New Delhi. She has been associated with the ITNCA since 1992 and has been engaged in the research, documentation, and preservation of cultural heritage of diverse communities in India. She prepared nomination dossiers for 22 art forms on behalf of the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, for inscription on UNESCO World Heritage List for the second and third cycles, and also initiated the compilation of first weight-based national inventory for ICH for the IGNCA. So that's about ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. I'm sure you're here. And the first panelist of the second panel is Dr. Deepak Kumar Roy. Dr. Deepak Kumar Roy is the professor, Department of Bengali and Dean Faculty of Arts and Commerce and Law, Raiganj University, Raiganj, Uttar Dinajpur, West Bengal. Professor Rai has published 14 books on folklore and linguistics. He is also the director, Center for Folklore Studies, Raiganj University. The second panelist today is Shubhashish Shane. So Shane is the director of Tal Bital Puppet Theatre. He is multimedia artist with specialization puppetry. He received training on folklore from Academy of Folk Theatre, especially on folk theatre and its allied forms. He has been awarded senior fellowship from Ministry of Tourism and Culture, Department of Culture, Government of India on puppetry in education. And the last, of course, not the least, panelist is Mr. Kalam Potua. It's a well-known modern Kalighat painter. Mr. Potua is a pot artist and innovator of modern art form. Mr. Kalam Potua actually revived the traditional Kalighat form in the early 90s, and his paintings have been procured by many leading museums of the world. The narration of today's presentation, whatever the presentation will be given today, will be done by Moushumi Roy Chaudhuri, who is the researcher and writer. So over to Madam, Professor Molly Kaushal, ma'am. Ma'am, please kindly start the session.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for introducing me and introducing the panel. I would first of all also like to thank Sasha Mishta. It is because of her that I'm there on this platform. And I am very glad and I feel honored to be here. I've heard all your presentations yesterday on YouTube. I heard the panelists and the chairperson in the previous section. And so many questions that have been raised, and each one of them is so relevant and so important today. And in fact, I would like to congratulate the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for bringing up such an important issue that confronts us all. If you've been on the national media, you will see that nobody has actually thought of the plight of the folk artists, the folk performers. We've had a lot of stories, we've had a lot of campaigns that have been talking about the migrant laborers, and we don't have a single program that has talked about the concerns and the languishing folk artists and the folk performers. And that also probably, as Amreshwar Gala was talking about the middle class sensibilities. So where do our sensibilities really lie? And even now, when we see that the pandemic is actually much more in the villages and we're so quick to make judgments and we say, oh, it's after all those people, and only if they're non-migrated, if they, the pandemic would not have spread. So it's with these kind of sensibilities that we've approaching, and we've always approached. India is a very, very hierarchical society. And in those hierarchies, art and culture is a very marginalized. It's on the periphery, it's on the margins. The folk art, forget, once you have culture, the culture as entire entity is on the periphery. And within that, then you have, though academically and in our writings and webinars and seminars before that, we've always spoken about, oh, but then in India, there is no little tradition, there is no great tradition, and there is a confluence. And I agree that there is a confluence, and we do need to look at holistically at what constitutes greater arts or what constitutes marginalized arts. But when it comes to really the ground realities, that you see that the art itself has created its own hierarchies, and there are the folk arts is something which is which actually has, in a way of speaking, no aesthetics into it. And though we now buy crafts and we decorate our houses and we buy handicrafts and we buy handlooms, but we end up seeing them only as a product, and we don't look at the people behind the product. Yesterday, I had organized a webinar with some of the I just call them the artists, contemporary artists of India, and we had Venkat Sam there, we had Kalyan Joshi speaking, we had Anwar, we had Anil Wangar. And who are these artists? Who are these painters? What are they doing? They are actually the chroniclers of our history. What will be history tomorrow, and what is contemporary today, which are the present time? And look at the ingenuity of these contemporary artists that we have labeled as folk and we've labeled as tribals, and they are the first ones who come about. I don't know when historians will be writing about the Corona period and coming up with their analysis or whatever. But these were the first ones. They have already left you with a document of these present times, which will be tomorrow's history. So what these hands are creating, what these mouths are singing, what these hands are weaving, they are weaving our not just our present, they are in the present time, talking both to the past and creating something of everlasting value for tomorrow. And then when we talk about national identities and when we talk about linguistic identities, we talk about regional identities, it is exactly that these are the people we want to kind of, parade them as trophies. And even of your great traditions, we are an oral society. We have always relied on our modes of transmission. Our modes of transmission of knowledge have been always oral, and the custodians have always come from the classes which are the depressed classes of our society, unfortunately. And our gaze does not reach behind the product. And what this pandemic has really taught us, and you in this whole conference, such important issues have been raised. Issues of how fast we are to accept anything as new normal. We normalized our hierarchies. We have now normalized marginalization, which has happened due to lockdown. We have normalized that we're going to always be in this post-lockdown period, and we've normalized the fact that the certain people would be further marginalized in this. So this whole habit of normalizing everything and being too quick to talk about new normals is something that we need to question. We need to question our hierarchies. We need to question we need to question the modes of transmission that are considered as a privileged modes of transmission. And 24,000 crore of your GDP, your economic industry comes from handlooms and handicrafts. And the fact that we said that it's only a produce, you marginalize the ritual specialists, you marginalize the singers, you marginalize the shamans or the oracles, you marginalize. And what does happen to Pithoda? This was a wonderful presentation in the last session that you started having these, miniature on paper craft traditions which are sold like 10 rupaye mein. Venkat was, yesterday in my webinar when he spoke, he said these, buyers from the city would come and they'll say, how much did you spend on this paper? Maybe 10 rupees. How much color have you used? Maybe another 3 rupees. And why do you want to sell it at that higher cost? It should not cost more than 20 rupees or so. So these are the questions. And then we come to the digital platform, and also we talked about CSR. Yesterday, Saratji talked about the new economic policy, and we've talked a lot about digital. So digital platforms, and digital platforms have their limitations, one agrees, but digital platforms are probably also, if we are saying, okay, we are in the new normal, then digital platform probably will also democratize this space, democratize the marketing of you talked about in the last session about the middlemen making most of the money. And where does the CSR money also goes? It doesn't go necessarily directly to the makers of this art, to the makers of our history, but it goes to certain institutions, it goes to certain NGOs, and nonetheless, understanding that what important role the NGOs and the government institutions and private institutions and corporates can play together, there is a much more need of our coming together in order to think about policies. We talked a lot about national policy. I remember when I grew up, this word was like something that should never even be mentioned. The national cultural policy, what are you talking about? The policing regime. But we realize that if we have to handle a massive, and it cannot happen through charity. I know so many people are making efforts. Ananya's presentation was so wonderful. Maitra's presentation today was so wonderful. There are independent people like here in Delhi, Sanjay Roy, Shudha Mudgal, and so many other individuals who are creating these small little funds. But are these funds going to really last? Our economy is in doldrum. The world economy is in doldrum. Who's going to fund the NGOs? Forget about funding the artists. So congratulations to Kolkata Society for Asian Studies to bring such a wide variety of scholarship. The chairpersons, that Gala and Saratji yesterday, that they are the people who have worked on the ground, and they have ideas of what's really going on and what probably can be the road ahead, the road map that we need. And we have wonderful panelists today. They've been already introduced by you already. So first of all, I welcome you all. We have probably the first speaker, Dr. Deepak Kumar Roy, who's a professor in the Department of Bengali and the Dean of Arts and Commerce in Raigad University, who's going to speak about folk art and artisans of North Bengal. So welcoming all the participants, the audience, the organizers, I now call upon Dr. Deepak Roy to kindly make his presentation.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
The two-day national webinar on survival of folk art and artisan in the COVID-19 situation. This is organized by the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. Thanks to Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for this privilege. I want to say something. Folk art and artisan of North Bengal. First of all, I want to perform. This is a folk instrument of North Bengal. Not only North Bengal, this is the folk instrument of North Bengal and Northeast India, and popular in Bhawaiya folk song. I want to perform some tune. Namaskar. You know, the North Bengal, there is northern part of West Bengal. Northern part of West Bengal, North Bengal, state of West Bengal, has a rich cultural and artistic heritage. In the North Bengal area, 152 languages till now, and 4 language family. Dravidian, Austro-Asiatic Ostic, Indo-Aryan, and Tibeto-Burman. And Tibeto-Burman language group, most important role in northern area of West Bengal. In the Tibeto-Burman language group, that Koch, Mech, Rabha, Gado, Drukpa, Toto, Dhimal, Limbu, Lepcha, etc. And another Ostric, Santali, and Dravidian group, that is Kuduk, a Kuduk language group. And another most important part, a major population of the Rajbangshi community all over the North Bengal. In North Bengal, there are so many artistic diversity, handicraft, marks, painting, carving, and not only that, also performing art form. First, I want to say that is marks another in Mukha. In Bengali, Mukha, and locally known as Mukha or Mukhos. Mukha or marks or Mukhos, one of the most important implements. It has a many mysterious history. There is various types of marks made up and marks in Rajbangshi community. Jalpaiguri, Kochbihar, Darjeeling, Uttar Dakshin Dinajpur, popular wooden marks, various type of wooden marks. These wooden marks actually based on mysterious history, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and local folk deities based wooden marks. In the wooden marks, there is so many rituals, customs. On the other hand, in the Himalayan zone, popular dragon marks. Dragon marks, Limbu, Lepcha, and Drukpa community settled in Alipurduar district, Boksha Duar. Once upon a time, dragon marks popular in Dhimal community and also Koch Rabha community of North Bengal. Now it is established this marks tradition. These marks, some of the marks came from the tribals community, not only tribal, Mes community. In the Mes community, they are known as Mes in West Bengal. In Northeast India, named as Bodo Kochari or Bodo community. Not only Bodo community, Gado, Bodo, Rabha, and Hajong, that's undivided Gwalpara, Washam, and Hazan community of Meghalaya, and Dalu community, and Koch, Wanang, Harigeya, Tintakia, Banai, Chapra. There are so many wooden masks, popular in the rituals, custom, and performing art. In the pandemic situation, artisan of the mask artist, artisan of this culture, they are day to day deprived and they are day to day marginalized in this present situation. On the other hand, I want to say bamboo craft and bamboo low, popular in North Bengal. Fishing implements, so many fishing implements made by bamboo. Dhorka, Dedu, Temai, etc. Chadu Chandra Shanal, a renowned scholar, in the Rajbansis of North Bengal, they mention various type of bamboo implements, fishing implements, popular in North Bengal and Northeast India. In the various tribal tribe and caste community. And this tradition, basket, and agriculture-based folk art and implementation, folk fishing implements, popular in North Bengal. And there are so many artisans involved in this benefit, in this work. And nowadays, in the pandemic situation, they are already marginalized. They are not survived their culture, their indigenous culture, indigenous tradition. Next, Katha. Katha, all over the Bengal, Katha popular, and also popular in Uttar Dinajpur, Dakshin Dinajpur, and Malda. And various type, on the other, various type of ornament who ornament that is in the Bhawaiya song, popular, Baniya Bondhure, Ekhan Nolok Gode Ade, etc. Ornaments popular in Chandrohar, one of the most important ornaments in Koch Rabha community and Rajbongshi community and others communities of North Bengal. Chandrohar, Mutha Khadu, Shaka Khadu. This is the most important folk art. But today, this artisan of folk, ornamental men, that is Bania, who are made this ornament. This call in North Bengal, that is Bania. Bania, till now, there is no any patronization, no any survival process, no any government plan. Day to day, this Bania community already, and this ornamental tradition, which is the most important part of our culture, of our heritage, already marginalized. Dress and weaving art, popular in Mech community of North Bengal. That is Dokna. This is the Fanchek. It came from actually Kocha Rabha community of North Bengal. Fanchek. And Fanchek, one of the weaving art, there are so many motif. This is the most important. And not only that, in Coach Bihar district, that Mekligons, popular Mekla art. And another part of Uttar Dinajpur, the popular Dhokra art, Dhokra Shri. And not only that, Patani, Phota, most important part of Rajbongshi community. And Phota, Patani, most important color contrasts, yellow color of the Rajbongshi community, yellow color, most important part. And the Rabha, Kocha Rabha community, red and black. This is the most important part of this ethnic community, ethnic culture, artistic view, point of view. This is the most important. And not only that, in the folk deities of Mashan, in the Coach Bihar district, there are so many folk deities of Mashan. Mashan, one of the regional folk deities. And popular all over North Bengal, not only North Bengal, undivided Goalpara, Assam, Meghalaya, lower part that is Tura area, and West Garo Hill, and Nogao, Dorong, Bongaigaon, in this area. And and Nepal, Chapa Modong Sulsuri area, there's Martian art form, very, very popular art form. And on the other hand, Alpona, all over the Bengal. Alpana, there are so many motifs, there are so many, there is folk painting formation. This is the most important part of folk art of North Bengal. On the other hand, this is the Dotora instruments. And Dotora maker, there is so many instruments popular. There is Dotora, Sharinja, Jugi Jantro, and others. In all over the North Bengal, only two center in the Dhupguri and another center in Darjeeling district, Jalpaiguri district and Darjeeling district. Recently, another center already established, one NGO in the Dinhata, Kojivihar district. But there are no any online purchasing availability. In this pandemic situation, in the COVID-19, they are already marginalized. There is no any communication, no any processing, no any communication, no any facility. Day to day till now, we are work on this art form. They are deprived. There is no any government facility, no any NGO facility. This is the situation, present situation. On the other hand, we want to say that Santal community and Malpaharia community, there is various art, god and goddess, and various images popular in the North Bengal area. And performing art, Gombhira Pala in Malda district, and marks most important part of this performance. Not only Gombhira, in the Choruchunni Pala of Jalpaiguri district and Gomira Khela in Uttar Dinajpur and Gomira Khela in Jalpaiguri, Alipurduar and other parts of Northeast India like undivided Gwalpara and West Garo Hill of Meghalaya and Jhapir Bandar, Shilchor, a part of Assam. There is so many. Gombhira Khela with marks. This is the folk performing art. And this folk performing art, this tradition, we cannot, the folk performing art, there are in this social distance and pandemic situation, this folk performing art and artisan already marginalized. Already, there are so many ritual forms, not only that, Bishohara Pala, Ravan Pala, Ushan Pala, Gombhira, Khon, Gomira, Pachali. This performing art already affected by the pandemic situation. This is the present scenario of North Bengal. And this, on the other hand, in government level, according to our field survey, according to our field data, in the Kshetriya Gramin Bank and Rural Bank, there are banking system, loan system, general credit card system, SSC system, RSETC, Rural Self-Employment Training Institute, Government of India, in Jalpaiguri, Nibri districts. Not only that, Jalpaiguri. There are so many government opportunity by the banking system. But practically, this folk artisan, they are neglected. They are not connected with this scheme. This is the present situation. This is our fieldwork based experience. And marketing today, nowadays, Vishwa Bangla Haat, already established by the government of West Bengal. That's okay. But many artists and artisans not connected with Vishwa Bangla art, not connected with this system. This is the most important problem. So we want to suggest first awareness. How can we survive this folk art and artisan? We should encourage our artists to enrich their tradition and indigenous culture. Marketing, one of the most important. Government should purchase. Government should placement, most important part. Then we can save our heritage. On the other hand, new economic national policy there is no any national policy to survive a traditional and indigenous performing art and artisan in our society who are neglected. I want to suggest online performance availability. So many folk artists and artisans belongs in this area. Not only performing art, but also folk art form, alpona, mukhos, and other instrumental implements, various implements who are made, various implements. And they came from the marginal class. And till now they are the marginal class. We want to suggest online performance availability. Online purchase system, till now there is no available. And digital platform to perform our cultural heritage, to revive our cultural heritage. We can perform. So we want to say this. Actually, we want to framework our national policy, our awareness, our marketing system. Otherwise, we cannot survive our performing art of North Bengal, because North Bengal, one of the marginal, one of the quote unquote prantik area. This area, there is so many diversity. 152 languages already still now in North Bengal area. And there are so many diversity, cultural diversity. This is our unity and diversity. We want to survive our cultural diversity, our performing art form, our folk art and artisan in the pandemic situation. We should identify our national policy. Otherwise, we cannot survive our artists and artisan in this situation. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Deepak Roy. I think you have really touched base with all the other speakers also who have in the last session as well as yesterday had raised the same issues. These are issues of marginality. These are issues of democratization of marketing spaces. These are issues of the diversities and marginalities within those diversities. So very, very important issues that we confront in this new normal pandemic or post lockdown period. And how do we come together? The question always remains is that how do we come together? And Lena Vincent actually gave a beautiful comment here, which is also stressing about the digital platforms. And as I said, that despite whatever limitations that these digital platforms may have, but they do provide us with an opportunity. They do provide us with an opportunity in which we can actually think of how we can democratize these places. How can these artists can themselves be, there has to be a question of digital literacy, which is very important, but digital training is very important. But as you so rightly pointed out, Professor Deepak Roy, then when there are these marginalized communities which are unlettered, which actually may not even have access to, the so much today hyped smartphones, and again marginalized within the larger sector of arts and crafts, where you will again have people who have access to resources, who are digitally much more powerful, they have more gadgets, the infrastructures are much more developed. And when then there is this competition begins to happen in the digital spaces itself, then where does this marginalized sector, where would these marginalized communities, you're very right that you talked about the community. Again, the heart of all this is the community. And then where do these communities, how would they survive? People have already written about, Lena also wrote that CRS funds find their way in some spaces. Now we have this whole policy for micro, small, medium enterprises. I don't think that the folk artists or folk communities, if you want to call, but I'll put folk within the quotes then, that these marginalized sections or these sections on the periphery, if they are ever going to benefit from that fund. Mr. Gala talked about the National Cultural Fund. Now we do have National Cultural Fund, but in this whole 5-6 months, I haven't heard anything of that, that fund should be utilized, that fund needs to be made more, it has to have more teeth, it has to have more resources, it has to have more much developed infrastructure, so it reaches a lot. Here we've just heard a case of North Bengal. You think of India and you think of all the large population that we are talking about today, right from within, West Bengal, which is still helping out its artists, Rajasthan, which is helping out its artists, and it fills me with a certain sense of guilt, because I come from a more empowered middle class background. I have a secure job which will provide me salary at the end of the month. But when people call and then when they're crying and they don't have food to eat, forget about money to buy their paper, money to buy their wood, money to buy their colors. What about their patrons who are themselves marginalized within a larger system of hierarchies that we have created, and more which are based not only socially but economically based hierarchies, and the patrons don't have money to support their dependent caste. So even those traditional structures which existed, which supported each other and supported this whole continuity of tradition, we are seeing that how they are really breaking apart. And thank you, Deepak Roy. Firstly, it was so wonderful to hear you with your Dutara, and it kind of really gladdened the heart that when we're talking about this grim scenario, but within this grim scenario, as all the panelists today have said, that within, and our artists are so resilient. Yesterday one of them was talking about, national new education policy, and he had dreams in his eyes that probably he can go back and, Gotul system can be developed again. So this resilience and to reinvent, our artists, actually those are really pushed to the wall, are at the brink, become so resilient and they become so innovative, because the spirit to survive, spirit to live, spirit to create is something which is so biologically inherent in those who have been deprived from everything else. So yes, there is definitely hope, and Deepak Roy, you bring in, both the despair and the hope together in your presentation. And thank you so much. I'm sure at the end of the session, there are going to be so many questions, that participants, the audience will have, and we'll come back to these issues again and again. And I think my next speaker is Subhashish Sen, who's the director of Tal Betal Puppet Theatre, and who is going to, and it's so important, and I think the title itself is so touching and is kind of a clarion call that we should, have for our folk artists. When you ask a question like, is there any room for artists and artisans in the society? Well, India had a lot of room for them in spite all its hierarchies. There was something which the interactions happened, the dialogues happened, and they survived together. But yes, in these times, when both those who provided the patronage and those who are looking for the patronage, when both of them find themselves today in limbo, where does our artists and where do our arts really stand? So, Professor Subhashish Sen, welcome, and I very eagerly look forward to this talk, which has resonates so well. I think across all those who empathize and who work in the field of these arts and these communities. Welcome, and please present your views. Thank you so much.
Please unmute. Please unmute yourself.
That red button down below, you just click on that, Professor Sen.
Pamogna, please help him to unmute.
Sir, please try to rejoin. Try to rejoin. Sir, please try to rejoin.
জয়েন করেছেন? হ্যালো,
হ্যালো, না এখনো করেন, জয়েন করেন।
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
audible. Audible.
Can it?
yes, yes, yes.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Sorry. Something happened. I didn't know. Excuse me. Good evening.
Welcome again.
All viewers of this webinar session. Distinguished and eminent panelists. Introduce the PRC Arasa, and the chairperson, Ms. Moni Kaushal, for the most pertinent issue of our time, survival constraints, folk art and artisans in the COVID-19 pandemic. My special thanks goes to Mrs. Sharmishta Basu, Secretary Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, for giving me the opportunity to an honor to be amongst such eminent personalities. In fact, I've gone through the webinar last day and today also, and I feel that everyone is so scholarly and they're so enriched with your experience that I really feel humbled to speak about. Anyway, though as I'm being given this opportunity, I would lose this opportunity. Last but not least, I convey my deepest gratitude to the Society for Asian Studies for conducting such a meaningful session on the burning issue, the pandemic, its impact, some pathways to get through, especially for the folk artists and artisans. I'm neither an academician nor a historian, a museologist, or an NGO person, but a simple urban folk practicing the art of puppetry since 1973, and in deep love for the art, culture, a lover of art, we call it. In all humility at my command, I may only have some right to speak on this issue, just as a friend of the art community with emotional binding only. Okay, so we start in this way. In the wake of a disaster, COVID-19 pandemic, life has come to a halt globally. Now that intermittent interruptions by our lockdown have led to an indefinite uncertainty of life and livelihood. As a performing artist since 1973, as a performer, I wish to share my observations, opinions as regards the perpetual problems faced by artists and artisans. As you all know, India has a long-lasting global heritage of its diverse culture in the form of painting, sculpture, craft, textile, music, performing art, and many other intangible, tangible, all kinds of art forms. Attempts have been made to conserve and preserve such heritage in many forms by way of documentary, films, written documents, stills, graphics, audios, museums, and the more. Though not exhaustive yet, records and glimpses of our rich cultural heritage can, however, be traced. What I feel today is that we who are at this age, grown-up age, we are talking about the heritage. But what about our posterity? Are our children really concerned about the heritage? Are they really thinking about the heritage? Where can they find the meaning of heritage? Where can they find the meaning of art forms, artisans? They never know. They only know the urban folks who play music or dance or whatever. So they are not concerned about the heritage at all because we never let them learn this. It should be practiced from the very early age so that they can be impacted at least towards this artists and artisans who really is the backbone of our society. Our mental strength, the physical strength is being given by so many things, and mental strength in times of disaster, in times of depression, we see that we take sort to therapeutic medium, and most of them are artistic mediums. Why? Because it is really healing, it is really tranquilizing for us in mind. And when we are really comforted in our mind, we can really create. Now, in this pandemic situation, even if it's not a pandemic situation, the artists and artisans are really ignored at all levels because they are poor, they are marginalized. And we need to think about them in from a very different perspective. Today, we are concerned, even maybe all of you who are the panelists and who are the chairpersons and all, and those scholarly people, you all know, I know very well. But the thing is, most of us are not really concerned about the whole thing. And that is leading to the disaster. Because whenever we ask for relief even from the middle class society, they look at us, and if they trust us, they give the relief. They are not artists and artisans. They have no concern for them. They are not bothered to listen to our talks. They only listen to our talks that, yes, we are really trying to help them in some other way. So that is my point. So artists and artisans, as earlier speakers have said, they need a dignity. They need to have an identity. They need to be appreciated. They need to be really glorified because they are really doing something or have done something. And isn't the contemporary that they are pushing forward their things into the market and really, uh, what should I call it, educating us with colors, with vibrant music, with vibrance everywhere. So why not give them that particular respect? Then comes the money. The money is very, very important. Otherwise, they can't live. And without them, we can't live a life. We can live a living, but we can't live a life. So they are the life source. They are the lifeblood of us. So they have to be really patronized in a really serious manner. And we need to be very compassionate and very faithful to us also, that we don't take away their money in the form of middlemen or something like that. We have to have a very honest heart for them. That is my approach as an artist for the artist. I'll speak in a very different way because I've heard of things, the history of the whole thing, the process of the whole. I know certain things that have become knowledgeable by this conversation only, and you made me really knowledgeable. I'm thankful. Well, as far as public is concerned, uh, large number of publishers have either given or migrated to other professions just in a survival, locally and nationally. Younger generation tend to show their back, seeing the instability and uncertainty of the business. Many could not preserve that from damage due to flood and natural calamity and took to some other profession. When you think about this, yes, really, I place also in various kinds of puppets and puppeteers all around all around India. And today I'm thinking this that if the puppets are damaged, as Dr. Roy was showing instrument is damaged, how can a performer perform? So we need to think about this also. So and as puppetry in special is very much in the coastal area, is threatened by flood and cyclone and all the natural calamities. So we have to think for them in some of the I'll be trying to post some sort of solutions for it. And I'm really charged up because of ma'am yesterday and today. If I forgot the name, just a minute. Ma'am. And more others. They were so positive. And they were so, what should I call it? They put across some data and all that it is not fictitious, it is real, it is transparent. And maybe they want more. They have come across certain number of people and they know that they could not really come up with the entire one. And we all have to think for the entire one. In she's having one zone, maybe I'm having another zone, like that. If we can arrange for that, then something can happen. If that, apart from the national policy, from the national policy, we can really rejuvenate the people that we are there and please be with us. So that is the spirit. We should give them the spirit and livelihood as well. Most of us have talked about livelihood, and that's very pertinent. And I'm really satisfied with that also. So that how can they be come for the general audience, for the general viewers, so that they also form a notion that yes, these people need to live, these people need to live. So if this scenario continues, I will find a place in the museum. I was talking about the puppets and as mummies, and an object to examine upon as a glory of the puppets. Artists are a source of inspiration. They are the designers of a delightful world. In each object we use, there is an obvious artist backed by an artisan to give it a shape and look. Even the laptop or the pen is designed to give a shape and look. So the society will come to a standstill if not the artists are cared for. Be it fine arts or applied arts, performing arts or draftsmanship, each contribute to the society for its progress. That we can never ever move an inch towards prosperity, physical or mental, without artists and artisans is unquestionable and undebatable. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello,
Now,
hello.
now, now I can hear, but till now there is some problem.
You cannot hear me.
Now we can hear you very well, but when you're making
Okay,
your presentation,
okay,
it
okay, okay.
was
Maybe I was a bit far. Okay, okay. So I'm Mr. Lot, I think. You couldn't hear anything of me, no? You
no,
couldn't hear me.
some points we could hear, some points we could hear, but lot of it was also lost. So that's very unfortunate, yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. So let me. Yeah, maybe I'm a bit far from the mobile, so that's why it's a problem. Now I hope you can hear me. Is it okay now? Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, so the artist doesn't need any charity, nor a one-time award or certification. They need dignity and a proper space to work and exhibit. They need people to appreciate and benefit from their works in whatever way they like. Government alone cannot serve the purpose. The NGOs, the museums, the media, be it print or electronic, the filmmakers, be it documentary or fiction, academicians, art lovers, and critics have a role to play to keep our cultural tradition and contemporary works alive, along with the government. Please remind me if you can't hear, then I'll shout a bit.
Okay.
Museums and anthropological societies may restore, exhibit, and hold performances and exhibitions from time to time, as said by many people. Uh, Even hold festivals of performing arts at national levels. Even more, regular performance each week at a certain time may attract tourists and a day-to-day visitors to the museum as well. For posterity, this is very important. Performances may be recorded of each era and archived along with an interview of the artist. Yesterday, um, I forgot the name. One man was saying that the artists need to speak on their own about themselves. I wholeheartedly agree with that. That they need to speak on their own because then only the power, the emotion will touch our hearts. If we speak on behalf of them, it will be say, a bit, what should I call, diluted. But I solely agree with, I forgot the name, I'm sorry. Uh, so, in my opinion, that it is observed that artists, especially the traditional ones, live in a commune or a locale of domicile. We may think of an arts village to be designed in each state to attract tourists, national and international, where artists in turn can perform and earn. This is one of my idea, though it is being done so far as I've heard from the panelists. So more has to be done, I think. Now, this point hasn't been touched by anybody, which I feel that it should be. You think, please, life insurance, mediclaim, group or family, property insurance, uh, especially the artists of coastal region suffer loss of property and become homeless almost each year due to flood and natural calamities. And insurance of their instruments, if provided by the government or any other agency, NGOs hopefully, it will be of immense help during this period of pandemic and thereafter. ZCCs may take up the responsibility in enlisting artists of their jurisdiction and helping them receive help from government from time to time. Applications and other formalities may be simplified and slackened for rural and folk artists so that they are not deprived of such help only on the text of formalities. Sangeet Art Academy, ICCI, and organizations of the like may pay an amount as royalty, holding virtual festivals from their archives to the artists and artisans at regular intervals so that they are not left to favor or charity. Let them live with dignity which they deserve. And one thing, again, maybe Mrs. Mitra has said, I can't recollect, that you need to name them, you need to have the art form named, whoever uses it. So if I create a documentary and I must, or if I shoot just for the sake of shooting, if I go there and shoot, I have to this is my opinion. So far as the folk artists are concerned, it is very, very what you call it, important for an artist to have his or her dignity. Um, Again, there's a one suggestion that when you listen to Patachitra and the Patuas sing, maybe all don't have so much of tune in their voice. They're not singers, but they sing and really open the scroll. So if we can at least make them teach them how to sing in a tune, maybe people will be interested in listening to them. I've seen people in melas or something like that, that people tend to move away because of the rustic voice or the detuned voice or whatever, but they don't feel the feeling of the artist. So as a performance, that has got to be a bit polished, I think so. So these are my observations, and most of my things are being said, and I'm very happy to note that okay, I'm in line with everybody so far as this issue is concerned. And now I'm left to questions. If you ask me, then I can answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sen, because actually your presentation has thrown up so many solutions, so many ways in which we should be thinking in terms of supporting our performing communities, our art communities, our artists, and it is not as if these issues were not a concern before. It is also not that these suggestions or recommendations have not been made. Professor Gala talked about India being having signed the Convention of Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage, but then despite whatever 18, 16, 17 of those items that are cultural items as they call, there are actually a lot to question also about our terminologies, whether they are being used at the international platforms or our national platforms. It is very important to question them also, because the moment it becomes an item, it has a different connotation. But having said that, the government of India makes this promise through signing of this convention, that it would be doing a national inventory, that it would be safeguarding, and the safeguarding measure thing about each of the form that is sent, I think, is the largest, where we promise that this will be done. And actually speaking, none of these forms, except where state governments may have shown little bit of interest, that these forms have, or the artists or the performers have got some kind of support or some kind of resources in order to revitalize their tradition. IGNC, for example, did that for Ramman, because I was the one who initiated that as the first form on the representative list, and we got some money, and the communities had to be involved. You very rightly said, Professor, saying that the artists must speak. Now it's their turn to speak out, because we've done enough speaking, and none of our enough speaking has yielded much result. Maybe a community resource center there in Garhwal, a community resource center by Ananya's thing in Bengal, and a little bit of hubs here and there, which don't really serve, because we don't seem to have provided a model saying that that we really don't constitute that. We're also marginalized, like the group that we are taking cuddles on behalf of. So the artists need to speak at the same time. Where would they speak, and to whom would they speak to? Where are those platforms that are available? And one platform could have been that convention, but then how bureaucracies operate, how red tapeism operate. And again, within the groups that we've created of our own artists, Professor Sain, I would say that even there is a certain kind of kinship that is happening. There are only certain kind of forms, certain kind of artists who keep coming to Delhi, who keep getting funds, who keeps getting resources, and the larger community. I mean, you are already yourself a director of a puppet theater. You would know that to put one performance, at least 30 artists and so many of their assistants are involved. So giving a meager, even pre-lockdown, 500 rupees per artist per performance, it's a shame. And you're right when you say that it's not the charity that they need, but somehow our policies have been like this, as if इनको charity दे रहे हैं. A classical singer can demand as much as he or she wants. I know that they are also suffering, so it's not like a rebuttal or something, but the fact also remains that the same organizations on the same platform would pay so little to a folk performer than to say so-called the classical performances, and this kinship that goes on even in terms of promotion of certain groups, promotion of certain forms, is something that also needs to be addressed. You're right that we should have health scheme. Now the government of India has a health scheme. Sangeet Natak Academy is probably right, but how many artists know about that? So the Ananya talked about creating awareness. So first step towards is to create awareness to them about these schemes, about their rights. And again, I would say that lockdown has come as also as a kind of a gift, because now through digital platforms, at least that awareness can be created. Maybe new solidarities can be created, and a voice has to come. Maybe all NGOs, working in different regions have to coordinate, come together. All cultural institutions, private or government, have to come together. And what Calcutta Society is doing right now through this webinar has to be done at a much larger scale. Maybe they'll take the initiative that the voice can be created. Otherwise, artists, whom does he talk to? Even the biggest of artists wait outside those corridors of culture ministry. Where would a poor patwa go? Maybe some of them who have made name for themselves internationally, they may get little access. The other one would not even be allowed inside. So the situation pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic is a continuation of how we have marginalized, we have hierarchized our institutions, our art traditions, our communities. And unless those hierarchies are broken, and I do think that digital platform probably can provide that, because I know the new hierarchies will, as I spoke, that high art and little art, who has the infrastructure, who has the money, who has the resources, who will have the patronage, all this will be there. But I think that your at least presentation is giving some concrete suggestions, and what I'm adding to it is that all this exists. It's there on the papers. These schemes are there, insurance, health schemes, all that, but the common performer doesn't even know about them. So how does he exercise his right? Is a moot question. And does larger systems really gear towards people who can exercise their right? Is another question that probably we need to ask. And thank you so much, Professor Sain. And now we have Kalam Patwa, who actually is that voice. and probably, his periods of struggles. He went through all that what his community, his own fraternity is going through right now. And there is demoralization, there is depression, there's a question of mental health. Not every artist is being sold on digital platforms also. So who else can raise those questions, or who else can provide that voice but those who have found a certain space, a certain niche for themselves? And Kalam Patwa, who is influenced by Kalighat painting, who has innovated so much in the tradition, is the right voice to listen to. I invite Kalam Patwaji to come and speak to us and share both his anguish as well as lend voice to his fraternity on this platform. Kalam Patwaji.
Hello, am I audible? Hello,
Yes, Kalam, we can hear you. Yeah.
hello.
Audible, absolutely.
I'm a Potua, originally hail from Potua community, and my birthplace was the western bank of River Ganga, just opposite to the Nava Palace. And you know the glorious heritage of scroll of Murshidabad. If you visit Guru Sada Museum, so you can see the Murshidabad scroll. And my maternal side is Birbhum. So there are so many famous scroll painter. Uh, I from the very beginning I practice this art form because my family members are Potuas, and my guru is my uncle. So the institute is my house, uh, and I just I like to want to show my some scroll paintings. So please, Tamagna, just a quick through. So, so this is scroll on Rabindranath Tagore. Uh, so I thought in the year 1987 for modern theme. Before that, I mixed scroll on Ramayana, Mahabharata, Manusa like this. But in the year 1987, the government of West Bengal Ministry of Culture organized a workshop and all Bengal competitions. I stood third there, and first was Gauri Chitrakar, and second was Amar Chitrakar, the father of famous Sarno Chitrakar. So the same situation was at that time because the scroll painting was very endangered because Ramayana, TV Ramayana is more powerful than the scroll Ramayana. So just like this time, uh, all are thinking about how to survive this art form. So at the time, I suggest some suggestion. Uh, just we have to think ourselves, how to uh, beautify our scroll. And it's at the time scroll was 20 feet and more. So uh, most of the people love scroll paintings if they want to display their house. So it's so huge, and it is not possible to display in the houses. So we have to thought this size. It may be 6 feet, 7 feet, and maybe square form. Subject should be changed. We should not make so many Ramayana, Mahabharata. Then we start to make paintings on dowry problem. Rabindranath Tagore just being here, and so many things. RPS Eurydice also, the Greek legend. Uh, so that's we think about survival of the painting at that time. Um, Initially, there's so many people don't like it. I make the 9/11 painting on just second day of disaster at Santi Niketan, organized by the Eastern Zonal Cultural Center. But the organizer was not happy because what are you doing here? It's a just scroll painting workshop. I told them it is, I'll do. But it is a very tragic incident happened. So it touched me. So I make this painting over here. So initially, the something modern work they are not accepted. So it's a long way. Uh, I visited, and in the year 1987, when I stood fast. Uh, and so many people told about my painting that it is very much similar to Jamini Roy's and similar to Kalighat paintings. At that time, a deputy director of culture were present there. He told them the Jamini Roy is very much influenced by this art form, Potwa. Potwa are not influenced by the Jamini Roy, and this is their ancestor work. Kalighat painting, also their ancestor work. I have seen some Kalighat images, and I heard about from my uncle about Kalighat paintings because they were stayed in Kalighat to make their idol of god and goddess Durga Puja. And there are so many puja continuing. And around 1930, they leave the Kalighat paintings. Maybe huge earthquake taken place, and Patwas left Kalighat temple, and pilgrimage not visited. Thus, around 1930s, totally disappeared Kalighat paintings. Then I thought I have to revive this style of painting. Then I visited Kalighat for a guru, but there is no person practicing at that time. Even I have met so many people, Potwa people in our workshop and crafts fair. So there was none to practice this art form. So I promised myself I have to revive this style of painting again. Then I started and make Tamakna next. Tamakna next. This is on Rabindranath Tagore. Just a series. Next. This is a plantation ceremony started by the Rabindranath Tagore. There is a song on বৃক্ষরোপণ উৎসবের করে গেলেন শুরু সবাই মিলে গাছ লাগাও খুশি হবেন গুরু. It's a festival started by the Rabindranath Tagore. We should continue it so that he may be happy. Next. This is Rabindranath visited so many foreign countries by sea or by flight. Actually, I made at that time a famous filmmaker come to India and make a documentary on Rabindranath Tagore, and he asked me to make the scroll painting from this. From this plane, the original pen start from the film, and Rabindranath physically arrived in the foreign country. So it was very interesting. And next. Again, the Santi Niketan started the education center, the Viswabharati University. Next. This is the jump pot of Birbhum and Murshidabad. So after that is the moral education. So all these are for moral education. Just Birbhum and Murshidabad put was included this part of the Patchitra. Next. This is the last work of my Guru Bodhanath photo, my uncle. My father Bholanath photo is not practicing much, but Bodhanath photo is my Guru. This is the last work of my uncle. Next. This is traditional my creation Krishna, and it is 26 by 40 inches. It's a little large. Next. This is Saraswati, the bigger side 22 by 30 inches on paper. Next. When I start Calicut paintings, I make a huge copies, and Guru Sadar Museum helped me much. At that time, Ashish Chakraborty was the curator, and he gave me permission to take the photographs and study the old art. So this is old, and this is copy. Next. Next. So this is my style and traditional Ganesh Janani. Next. This is also a little bit included in background because there is no background in Kaligat painting, old Kaligat painting. Very few. I started like this. Next. This is also traditional. Next. Again like this. Next. The air is blowing. This is singing. This is one of my starting in modern thought and thinking. Cell phone arrived. It 2000 like work in the year 2000, I think. Next. The romance in post office. Actually, for your kind information, I am a postal employee. Now I am working in the Dampurat Head Post Office. So I have a series of paintings on postal service. Next. This is Lodhi Garden. I have visited so many times in Delhi Crafts Museum. Crafts Museum is my temple because when I started Kalighat painting, at that time there was a TV show, and Rani Chitrakan and me went there from Calcutta. And at that time, I bring some practice work to the museum. At that time, Dr. Jyotendra Jain was the curator. And at that time, he also writing a book on Kalighat paintings. So he gave me opportunity. It was April. Then he give me invitation for May. It was very hot season, but I went there and he helped me much. Actually, I researching on the paper. So Dr. Jyotendra Jain first time giving me the original newsprint paper, and after having paper, I make excellent work. Next. This is my personal thought and thinkings. Next. Actually, I told Dr. Jyotendra Jain that I want to make an exhibition like a modern artist. I want to make something modern work because art and everything is like a river. But we are just stand, just like a bath, and we should be rotate. So rotten water is not so fine. So I told him I want to work something new, which I am thinking. And I showed some my work, and he was very happy. And he take me to the gallery space, uh, and uh, Renu Modi, and she was very much interested, and it was her solo show in 2004. This is one part. This is just left side. There is isolated figure. You can see over there. That is me. Actually, at that time, the modern painter not talk much as I am folk painter and inferior quality very much. So I am alone. They are gossiping, they are taking drinks and everything, but only that side I am alone staying there. So these ideas and the situation radically changed, and they appreciate much nowadays. All the very famous artists are a friend, not only Indian, all over the world in Facebook. In Facebook. So this change happened in my life. This is my journey next. This is a important thing. I came to know that there are so huge collection in Victoria Albert Museum, and I had a dream. If sometimes Victoria Albert Museum responds my work, but it's happened suddenly. I got an email from Suhasini Sinha, and she wrote there that I'm very much impressed to see your work in Paris group show. So I want to make a show, and there are so many conversations 1 year. She came India several times. I met them, and a tour exhibition she started from Victoria Albert Museum. PRC Bharosa at that time, ma'am was there. It was very excellent exhibition. This is NGMA, I think. I have some bad experience also there. At that time, the curator Suhasini not come. She was pregnant, and doctor forbid to come here due to a mosquito, I think. She told me, and Uye Potua was not get enough honor over here. Not only here, when he started in the Delhi NGMA, and the curator and the director told me that Potua is staying with us, but he did not take my name. So, so many people, they are gossiping. You should ask the name, and he should stand up so that we can see. But he didn't. So this is one of my bitter experience, I think. Even Calcutta, there are so many intellectuals moving here, and but they are not caring at me. So next. This is another scroll paintings on mural, Crafts Museum. It's just subject also Crafts Museum, because we visited so many times for several years. So it is still there now. So if you pay visit Crafts Museum, please go to the shop and watch it. This is my request. Next. This is the time of second show at Gallery Espas. I was there, and this incident taken place. Probably you are no understand what is happening there. So it was very touchy. I made this painting on Nirbhaya Kand. Next. This is intolerance. Actually, artists are not keep mum. There are so many incidents happening time, but artists, writer, so talk about this with their pen or their brushes. Here, two persons. It's the image of a mirror. The Hindu and Muslim are fighting each other, but they are sit on the tiger. But who will defeat it, and who will win, and who will get down from the tiger? tiger will eat them. So we have to think about it. So this is my message to all the Indians, so that we can stay together. Next. Not only that, behind that, so many vultures, they are taking opportunity. This is the Vrindavan Holi. So my motif is Krishna like this, is hairless. Some of what was also using my motif. Next. This is also on Victoria Memorial Hall. So it was not moved. So photographer and visitors, they seeing what is happening, they are thinking about it. So this is one of my work on Victoria Memorial Hall. Next. This is photography series. This is one part of photography series. Next. Tamagna. Is there any problem? Just quick run through. There are few paintings.
Just a moment.
Okay. So this is ladies tailor we see in village. So that's something my observations and experience come in my work. Next. And try to make some humor there over there. This is on another photograph series, photography at India Gate. Next. This is nature. We are from nature. In Bengali, Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. My mother is a nature. I come from my mother. So this is a nature, and every creature come from this nature. It may be general people, it may be scientists, it may be everything, every creature. So this is one of my work, even Brahma, if you can think. Next. This is the honor to the women power. This is their Shakti, Nari Shakti. So this is a tribute to my mother, my sister, my friends, and my ladies concerned. So they are the Shakti. They can work so many things. So what can I say? So this is Shakti. Probably this one last. Which I am Molly ma'am told about. So I have to raise our voice. Yes, I need a pace. I want to raise our voice. I want to pace for my workshop, for my training, for my education, for my health and hygiene. So I need a place. And last yesterday's and today's I got myself enough educated me. And we need the digital educations also during this pandemic period. Almost year is passing away. I am by chance I'm a postal employee. Therefore, I am surviving. But I know there's so many my other photos. They have no work, or they are not selling anything. And not only photos, performing art, and doll puppet theater. Every performing art is very much suffering. So government and NGO, Madam told yesterday. So we all together have to think how to survive our art and artisans. So they are just making very few for very few paise on the marks also. So very little amount they are getting from there. So uh, every government, NGO, and you, the scholar people, just think about how we can survive. So, and from my point of view, so many people told about us. We want to told about us. So we need this space. We need we need digital education. Yesterday I was present in I don't mute my mic and the camera. So I got educated 2 days. So I need this digital education and digital device, all the portuas need, so that they can show their works and everything, and they talk about their problems, their need and necessity. So all these, thank you everybody. And I don't know better English. Sorry for that.
Thank you so much, Kalamji. I think we all need to applaud. I am applauding for all the panelists, and what wonderful paintings. I very unfortunately, this I have to narrate this incident that, like Kalam, other folk, there was another folk painter. I don't call them folk. For me, they are contemporary painters of India. And he went with his material to NGMA. And he was told, this is not a craft museum. Take your stuff to craft museum. We own. So when you relegate such important documents of the contemporary and the chroniclers of the what will be called history today as craft, and to be pushed away from the museums that are supposed to have been created and provided funds so that these documents of visual images can find a place of pride. You talked about dignity, so now you know what kind of truths that we have to encounter. Gina ji has talked about inauthentic, and I'm sure Kalamji has also kind of encountered this, that again, one of the academies who was taking these, taking the artists and performers out for some of the festivals, they said, we cannot accept you because you are not authentic. You are making innovation. So I mean, this whole thing of what is authentic, this search for the authentic, there's one side is romanticization, another side is that we are, we are raising voices as to how to incorporate into a larger, more inclusive ways of thinking, more inclusive way of doing things. And thank you, Kalamji, for bringing your art to us, for telling that, there are street performers. We've not even spoken about it. There are acrobats. There are these tamasha street performers. There are itinerant singers. There are jogis. They're all out on the street. And this is a very, very unorganized sector. So unless there is, as Amresh Galaji was saying, that we start having national registers, we start having national inventories, only then can any schemes can be reached out. So probably we need artist guilds, at a national level. And maybe there are smaller guilds that may exist, but to benefit that, we need much larger infrastructures, more ingenious ways of thinking, and putting our resources to use in a much more meaningful way. I can see a lot of academies who are putting their, earlier recorded performances of our artists, and it's creating audiovisual national archives, but the artists are not being recognized. Their names are not there. They're not being offered any remuneration for recirculating that material. They were, after all, paid for that just one performance. So the copyright of that performance should lie with the performer or the artist. But that's really not happening. But I think we've actually running short of time already. So if there are very pertinent questions that you would like to ask any of these panelists, you're most welcome to do that. Maybe we can just take 2 or 3 questions, and after that, the organizers would probably like to wind up this whole thing. I really thank all the panelists. Have enjoyed wonderful discussions, wonderful solutions that have been provided, layouts have been provided, and my heartiest congratulations to Sarmishta and Leena and Kolkata's Asian Society, where all your entire team for really raising this issue today on this platform. Thank you very much, all of you. And if there are questions, you can put it in the chat box. And so nice to see works of Kalam Patwa. Nice to see Mr. Patwa's work and his journey. Excellent presentation by Mr. Kalam Patwa. So there are a lot of these appreciations that are coming for you and for earlier panelists also. But I don't see any questions. So, Session, Mr. Ji, would you like to wind up this here? Because I have given my inputs after almost every paper. There's no need for me to sum up again give
Yes, yes, ma'am. We can wind up there. Then I just want to say that thank you to all of you, all of your effort to join here, and invite Piyashi to call Otita Basu for vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Maury Kaushalji and the 3 panelists, Professor Deepak Kumar Roy, Mr. Sen, Subhashish Sen, and Mr. Kalam Patwa. So that's the end of this session today. Now I would like to request Dr. Otita Basu, Treasurer of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, to propose the vote of thanks. Otita, please.
Good evening, all. As all good things come to an end in life, so is the webinar. On behalf of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar on survival constraints of folk art and artisans in the COVID-19 pandemic organized by our institute. COVID-19 is a crisis for all of us. We all have a new normal life with a lot of challenges. Those videos of jobless migrant workers walking homewards were incredibly moving. Folk artisans, equally affected, remain invisible and therefore ignored by the government, by the media, even by those who used to buy their products. Outside the safety net of regular salaries or social security, they are helpless. The coronavirus crisis had forced artisans' families into a hand-to-mouth existence. The pandemic has virtually brought the sales of folk art objects to a halt, with almost no takers for the wide range of artifacts in these hard times. Adding to the miseries of artisans, items made by them prior to the lockdown in mid-March, based on orders from customers, remained unsold. Hard hit by the pandemic crisis, the artisans' families are desperately looking at the persons to help them to tide over the present crisis. The pandemic has left artisans' families in the lurch with the sole means of livelihood being threatened by the unbettered crisis, seeking financial support from the government with their mission to keep their folk art tradition alive. For months, artisans have been without markets, sales, orders, or prospects. The future of folk art markets and bazaars is bleak. The projected global recession will mean that fewer people will have cash in their pockets to buy folk art objects. Pessimist economists say it may take years for us to get back to our pre-pandemic rate of growth. The global economy is predicted to contract 3%. Folk art object is sadly not an essential. It is the first thing to be struck off consumer wish list when purchasing power diminishes. Artisans realizing that folk art is communication are using it to create awareness much needed in rural areas where little access to news or Medicare. Undaunted, they are using the lockdown to think and create new design for their next exhibition. Though many fear the impact of COVID-19 may be the end of artisans, still it is their creativity and resilience that could save them. Folk artists need sustained investment and assistance. Government, craft organizations, and designers need to come together and work closely with the artisans, listen to their voice, build on their strength, think out of the box. It is exciting to see folk artists painting contemporary themes of life during COVID-19. All over India, women embroiderers are making ingenious versions of masks, while Kashmiri leather artisans have turned their hand to PP outfits and gloves. Since synthetic stainless steel and glass surfaces have been found to carry the virus for longer, it is an opportunity for artisans working in paper, brass, fiber, wood, and resin. This includes packaging, an area of huge potential growth. For the first time, retailers, designers, and entrepreneurs realize that individually they cannot support them all, and that if their carigars go under, so will their own businesses. The realization has also hit home that the way we market craft has to change. Sourcing too will have to change. Entrepreneurs and designers will have to go to the craftspeople rather than the other way around. The channels of communication therefore have to evolve. All of us have realized that going online is inevitable. Here too, we need the help of each other. If folk art products have to be appealing online, they need to look good, be presented with skill and style. Entrepreneurs, NGOs, and artisans have the skills of presentation, photography, content, digital know-how, or the human resources to make this happen overnight. Here is an area where we should pull in other professionals and work in partnership. Is it idealistic to think of one wonderful folk art portal naming both makers and sellers instead of us all competing for the same online space? I see another opportunity here. We all agree that half the charm of a folk art object is the process, the maker, and the tradition. The internet enables us to present this effectively and creatively without physically having to transport the artisan and his or her equipment and tools to the spot. To have the maker tell the story, show the material and the technique that transforms it. If we can do all these things successfully in a visually engaging way, it will make up for that lack of touch and feel. We need to go back to that golden age when every folk art object was functional as well as decorative. Indians too should be tempted back to buy local, buy Indian. For these, artisans will need design interventions and product development, which can be another area where collaboration works. Craft interventions need to work in partnership with craft communities to plan proper briefs to link up with potential clients. Craftspeople need to identify appropriate end markets for their products rather than making things at random and then try to randomly find them a market or buyer. This is an area where our design schools should also collaborate and plan ahead for, rather than predictably sending students to the usual well-trodden craft pockets. Folk artists shape the tomorrow with the folk art, dissipating the negative energy. Because after a thick, dark night, there is always a golden morning. To celebrate that spirit, the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies has organized this webinar to come together and introspect. It has been our pleasure to host all the participants of the webinar. We have fortunate enough to have some of the eminent personalities within us. I'm sure that the participants must have benefited by attending this webinar. At the outset, I thank our eminent chairpersons, Professor Shorit Kumar Chaudhary from Department of Anthropology, Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh, Professor Dr. Amareshwar Gala, the Chief Curator of Amaravati Heritage Town, and Dr. Molly Kausal, Professor at the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and our distinguished resource persons, Leena Vincent, Dr. Rajashree Mukhopadhyay, Jyoti Francis Javier, Sudeep Gupta, Ananya Bhattacharya, Dr. Boishakhi Mitra, Sandhya Gajjar, Dr. Piyasi Varasa, Dr. Deepak Kumar Rai, Subhasis Sen, and Kolum Potua. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. We are thankful to our Honorable President and Founder Secretary for their motivation. An event like this would not have been possible overnight. It requires planning and team effort. In this connection, we are very much thankful to our all executive committee members for their continuous support and advice for successfully organizing this webinar. A special thanks to Tomogno Rai, who is a state-aided college teacher of Department of Computer Science from Sarojini Naidu College of Women, for providing technical support to organize this event. Our heartfelt thanks to distinguished members of the audience for their virtual presence at this webinar. With these warm words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, and stand up for folk artisans.
Thank you all.
Thank you all once again, and I think we can now log out of this.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Professor Sarit Kumar Chaudhary, who is here, who was there the whole day yesterday in the session. And today also he's listened through all our talk. Sarmishta did tell me that Professor Sarit Kumar Chaudhary had given my name. So Sarmishta, thank you.